Board of Education for today, Tuesday, February 8th. This meeting is now called to order. Secretary Smith, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, you may. Dr. Blau.
Here.
Ms. Fox.
Here.
Ms. Heinrich.
Here.
Mr. Walker.
Here.
Mr. Rich.
Here.
I myself, I am here. And Ms. Weems.
I am here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We will now be led by Mrs. Solomon in the saying of the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Principal Solomon. We'll now move to items from the president. Oh, did we approve the agenda?
That's first.
Okay, first item. We have a motion. Mr. Rich?
I move that the Board of Education approve the February 8th, 2022 regular meeting agenda as presented.
Support. Motion made by Mr. Rich, supported by Mrs. Smith to approve the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions? The motion passes. Very good. Welcome again to the February 8th Farmington Board of Education regular meeting. The second meeting in February is canceled because it falls during midwinter break, which is February 21st through 25th. Therefore, the next meeting of the Board of Education will be held on March 8th, 2022 at 6 p.m. The meeting is open to the public and will be cablecast live on TV 10. Farmington Public Schools has a vision for high achievement for all of its students. Together with our community, we will engage every student in a quality learning experience, empowering each student to become a thoughtful, contributing citizen in a changing world. Please remember to silence all cell phones and electronic devices at this time. In addition, out of courtesy to those in the audience, we ask that you refrain from sidebar conversations and that you step out in the hallway if you feel the need to carry on a conversation. Thank you for your cooperation. For the safety of those in the room that are immunocompromised and to align with the Oakland County masking requirement for staff and students, we ask that all community members wear a mask. If you choose not to wear a mask, we have set up a room down the hall with a large screen TV that will stream this meeting. If you wish to express a public comment, you may return to this room at that time, express your comment, and then return to the public viewing room. Public comment cards are in the back of the room and in the viewing room. If you would like to speak during public comment, please fill out a card and place it in the ceramic bowl next to Mrs. Sterren. Public comments will be shared after discussion items, and this is the opportunity for the public to share general comments. If the public comment is intended to be critical of or express dissatisfaction with a particular staff member, student, or group, you're encouraged not to identify the person by name. You may request a private meeting with the district representative or utilize the complaint process found in our policy. This provides for resolution of complaints at the closest point of origin. Generally, board members and the superintendent will not respond to public comment during the board meeting. Issues may be referred to the superintendent for investigation, study, and/or a response. We will now move to board goals. There are no updates since our last meeting. Again, however, the board goal number 1 on board education, the board completed this goal through December 31st. We've yet to complete some additional training, which we will do by June 30th. We will also develop some new member onboarding materials by June 30th as well. We are continuing to explore innovation. We've met all of our goals as of the end of last year, and we'll continue to have legislators present to us and do some relationship building with other boards across the state. On board goal 3, related to our vision and strategy, we continue to participate in strategic planning committee meetings and have board policy governance committee meetings as well. And as it relates to community engagement, we achieved our goals through December 31st, and we'll continue to look for opportunities to engage our community in a more two-way dialogue situation as opposed to the one-way communication that we have been doing since the pandemic. With that said, we will move now to items from the Secretary. Mrs. Smith.
The board has received communications regarding board Recognition Month, support for the Board of Education, Learning Path, MASK, BLM, and snow days. Communications are acknowledged, and when appropriate, a response is provided. A list of correspondence can be found in the board packet, which is available on the Farmington Public School website.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. We will now move to legislative update. Dr. Blau.
Yes, in particular, at the recent Government Relations Committee meeting last week, Dave Randalls explained that the IDEA legislation that was passed back in 1975, that's the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, first enacted in 1975 by U.S. Congress with the promise to fund up to 40% of the additional cost of special education to individual school districts for providing these services that we are required by law to provide to our students. However, the current federal investment in IDEA is less than 14%. We have a contingent going from Michigan to Washington, D.C. to meet with members of Congress to encourage them to embark upon a 10-year plan to gradually bring the funding up to the 40% that was promised back in 1975, 45 years ago. We have, as a board, decided to demonstrate our support for this initiative to provide, for Congress to provide the funding that it promised, and by passing a resolution tonight in favor of that action.
Thank you, Dr. Blau. We do have that matter as a discussion item later on today. That concludes legislative update. We will now move to district updates, and I will turn to Dr. Delgado.
Thank you, President Weems, and good evening, everyone. We have wonderful district updates this evening, and several of them, so I will try to keep my comments somewhat brief. First and foremost, our focus is completely on instruction and achievement. We are happy to say that our first semester at the secondary schools is in the books. We've started just a couple of weeks ago with our second semester courses. Additionally, at the elementary level, we finished our second of 3 NWEA assessments that are given annually, 3 times a year, to really monitor the progress of our students. And so we are working very, very hard at the district and the building level on systems that are being put in place, on our professional learning communities, on data literacy, as well as data analysis with our wonderful teachers, as well as being very thoughtful about the ESSER funds that we've received in terms of gauging the efficacy of current interventions to support students, as well as planning for the 22, 23, and beyond school years with the utilization of those funds for appropriate interventions, looking at the data that we have right now. Later on this evening, we'll have a wonderful presentation by our instructional team to talk a little bit about our growth as well as achievement, and we are moving in the right direction. So I'm excited to highlight that as the first update from me. Second, happy Black History Month to everyone. I want to share some of the wonderful things that are happening around our district. From the district level, we are actively planning our program entitled I Too Am America. It's focused on African Americans in the arts. We'll feature student performances, profiles on prominent African American artists, and a student panel as well. At the elementary level, we're highlighting African American leaders each morning during daily video morning announcements, and teachers are making authentic connections within the curriculum for students to deepen their understanding about the contributions of African Americans in our country and in our region. Additionally, at the elementary level, there are several book displays in the media centers, student biographies that students are actually positioning themselves as influential Black Americans in the future. So when you think of the idea of seeing themselves in their own work and envisioning their contribution as a young person in the future, it's just remarkable, that idea of positioning. And then, of course, student artwork. That's all, that and much more is going on at our elementaries. At the middle school, we have a virtual locker contest. They're doing, of course, daily announcements as well. There's a sponsored event by one of our parents who sponsored a $300 scholarship for an essay contest. And so middle school students are actively applying for that and creating posters as well as daily lessons for their their win time each morning when they have some opportunity to do some of the social emotional learning as well. Our middle schools also have an opportunity based on COVID, if it's available, with the availability to have a trip to the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. In our high school, Black student unions are doing daily announcements as well as doing classroom door decorations and have a huge part with the IDEA group working on our district program, again entitled I Too Am America. So we are so fortunate to live in such a wonderfully diverse community in the communities of Farmington and Farmington Hills. As you all know, we celebrate this each day, and not just in February, but we're happy to highlight some of the extra things that are happening during this special month of Black History Month. Third, I'd like to recognize that this week, February 7th through 11th, is National School Counseling Week. So take some time to thank a counselor in your life, either currently or maybe you remember those counselors who helped you along the way. Maybe find them and reach out to them and say thank you. Counselors we know have a tremendous impact on helping students achieve school success and planning for a career. This special week honoring school counselors provides recognition for counselors who implement comprehensive school counseling programs, which is a vital part of our educational process for all students. We thank our school counselors for being actively engaged in helping students examine their abilities, strengths, interests, and talents, and for working in partnership with parents as they encounter the challenges of raising children in today's world. We thank our counselors for focusing on positive ways to enhance students' academic, career, and social emotional development, especially over the last few years with COVID, the immense stress on students and on staff. Counselors, our social workers, our school psychologists have all pitched in to help with that social emotional support. And counselors, of course, work with teachers and other educators to provide an educational system where students can realize their potential and set appropriate goals. So we thank our counselors, present and past, for all the help and the influence that they have on our young people. And then finally, just an update from a meeting I had just a few hours ago on COVID. So every Tuesday, I meet with all 28 of the Oakland County superintendents virtually, of course, as well as with the Oakland County Health Department, lead epidemiologists, and medical professionals from our area. They are actively examining the metrics to look at lifting the mask mandate based primarily on the community transmission level. So some of you may recall that way back in August, I remember the infamous date, Friday, August 13th, is when I released the information that Farmington Public Schools would be following a red, orange, yellow, blue community transmission rate. That eventually ended up being the same model that the Oakland County Health Department adopted. And the goal back then was that if we can get out of red, which is the highest risk level of transmission, and into yellow, out of red into orange, and then into yellow, which is considered moderate, then masks could become optional. And so that has not changed. The Oakland County Health Department is still looking at that as the primary metric they're using in the community transmission. However, several superintendents, myself included, had a robust conversation with the health department today to look at whether they were examining kind of the virulence of the different strains. We know that Omicron is much more transmissible but less severe compared to Delta. They're looking at percent positivity, hospital capacity, and they talked about the concentration and the density in schools that leads to that transmissibility that still could impact vulnerable populations. But suffice it to say, the Oakland County Health Department is listening and partnering and cooperating with superintendents. Months ago in July leading into August, we made a commitment that we would let our medical professionals guide us, and we're continuing to let our medical professionals guide us. And so we are all cautiously optimistic that all of the models, they talked about the models for COVID, are showing that hopefully within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we might be over the hump and we might have a precipitous drop that would change the county transmission level. So we're working on it, we're communicating, we're meeting weekly, and we're optimistic. So with that ends my comments, and then we have several other recognitions. So if you'd like, I can keep rolling on.
Please, yes.
Okay, all right. So next up, very, very excited to introduce from Farmington STEAM Academy. We'll start with our wonderful Assistant Superintendent of Talent Development, Ms. Kathy Smith, who's going to introduce an administrative appointment that we're very, very excited about. Ms. Smith.
Good evening. I'm super excited to be here. And tonight, I'm pleased to share a new administrator selection for the assistant principal at STEAM Academy. I do want to tell you about our very rigorous hiring process. It included a screen of over 60 applicants, so there was definitely not a concern around a shortage in this case. The process included, I really want to highlight a variety of layers, but the main one I want to highlight is 4 rounds of interviews. The first round of interviews was with central office staff all day long, bringing candidates in. The second round included a large team of stakeholders that actually had students, parents, and staff both in the building and outside of the building. It also included a third round interview of an intensive one-on-one. That's typically about an hour and a half to 2 hours at times interview. And there was also a final interview with Dr. Delgado. I am going to turn it over to Mr. Beasley to actually highlight the main final candidate that was selected for assistant principal.
Okay, so I hope you hear the excitement in my voice. There's much going on in Farmington Public Schools, and STEAM is no different, and I need a teammate. So I'm going to steal Kathy's word, super excited to introduce Scott Snyder as the assistant principal at Farmington STEAM Academy. He's been in education for 13 and a half years. Most recently, he was the assistant principal at Riverside Middle School in the Crestwood District. He's taught grades 3 through 8 in his tenure, and he's a proud graduate of Eastern Michigan and Central Michigan. I don't know how that works, but it's good. His passion for education and energy are evident the moment you meet him. And we are so pleased to have him on board at STEAM Academy. Scott Snyder.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for that awesome introduction from Mr. Beasley there. Just want to start off by saying thank you so much to the school board. I look forward to meeting each of you individually, as well as Dr. Delgado, Mrs. Smith, and my new partner in crime, Mr. Beasley. It's been just as she said, a very rigorous process. I was very pleased with the outcome, obviously, and I couldn't be more excited to partner and to team with all of you in Farmington Public Schools, a very innovative and creative district. Not to mention the building that I'll be serving in STEAM Academy with project-based learning focus, STEAM focus. I couldn't be more excited, honestly, to meet the students, the families, the staff members, every stakeholder involved. And you've got my word that I'm going to be working my butt off starting Friday this week to just go all in. Thank you.
Mr. Snyder, and welcome to the Farmington Public Schools family.
Thank you so much.
Next up, it's my pleasure to introduce our Director of Facility Management, Mr. John Barth, who is going to talk to us about our hybrid custodial plan update.
Good evening, President Weems, board members, and Superintendent Delgado. With me tonight is TJ Beasley from Pbl Industries. He's going to answer any questions you may have regarding their company. But first I want to recap what's happened in the past 2 months, which has been a hectic 2 months, just to remind what's happening out in the school and what we've done to push this forward. Keep in mind that this custodial services changeover process is normally 4 to 6 months. We're doing it in 2 months. So that said, I want to thank both Jim Pierce, Lisa Boyce, and Sandra Rivet in our department for their work. They worked tirelessly on the hiring process for our new FPS custodians that's in the works. Also for working with the planning the hybrid model itself and in doing interviews with our final candidates. Without going into too much detail, because I think you each received a packet that shows what was done for the past 2 months, basically. But this was done after we gave GRBS a notice of default back at the end of November, beginning of December. We actually gave them extra time to correct their deficiencies, which they did not do. So we were sort of forced into deciding whether or not to terminate their contract, which we ended up doing. That led to the whole process of replacing them and what's involved with that, which is a big process, as you know. We held a job fair on January 22nd. We had a number of candidates there. 40 candidates showed up, of which we think we have all 23 of the new FPS head custodians and foremen selected, going through the hiring process with HR right now. So that's all very positive. We put a bid out at the same time. Again, this is a 4-month process, 4 to 6 months, but we put a bid out. Unheard of in this environment. We had 20 companies respond to the walkthrough of the buildings, which is great. We had 10 bidders, formal bidders, which is unheard of as well in this day and age. So that was very positive. We had 4 companies brought in for interviews. That was Pbl Industries. We had Detail Experts, which is sort of local franchise group. We had Italian, which is a global company. And then we had LGC, I think it's LGC Global, yes, they're another global company. So we did final interviews with, like I say, our facilities team. They got a number of questions. They all answered very well, actually, but we believe that ABM is bringing the best partnership to the district right now. A number of things to consider. ABM has a number of large districts, a number of them in this area. They have Utica schools, which is huge. They have Rochester schools, and I talked to Pete over there, and they're doing a great job there. They have Plymouth Canton schools. I talked to Deb Piaz over there, so they're doing well over there. So this is all very positive. We're looking forward to this. The one thing I want to mention is that ABM is offering their custodians the highest hourly wage at $16.50 an hour to start. That's huge in terms of retaining staff, because that's an issue right now. They're all going to be working 8-hour shifts, so it's a living wage for them, which is very positive. So we're looking forward to this. In 2 weeks, contract signed, HR doing their work and getting our employees in. We'll be doing training the week of midwinter break. So when teachers come back, the school will be immaculate, and we'll have all new staff in there, including our own employees during the day, the head custodians. That being said, I'm really looking forward to a new partnership. I will tell you, I presented this at MSBO's town hall. I've had 12 districts reach out to me to see how we're doing with this whole process and to keep them in the loop, because it makes us look really good, and we're doing a great job in terms of getting this moved forward. With that said, I'm going to turn it over if TJ wants to say anything, answer any questions. I think I mentioned that there's no real impact to the budget this year. Next year there will be, but we're working with Jennifer on that. So that all being said, it's very positive. So TJ?
Good evening. Thank you. I just want to say thank you from ABM. We're looking forward to the partnership, and we're looking forward to working with the students and staff and the community here in Farmington. So if you have any specific questions.
Mr. Rich and then Mrs. Smith.
Thank you. From what's been presented to us, this looks fantastic. We look forward to having you working with us as a partner to make sure that our schools are clean, making sure that we have the best learning environment that we can create for our staff, students, and every community member who comes into our schools. As we enter into a new contract, getting things set up and all that, I just want to, this is the reason that we are coming to a new company and to you is because we have had issues with custodial services in the past. As is clear as it has been expressed to us by our staff, especially by our teachers. And we need to make sure that this partnership works. And I have full faith that with what Mr. Barth has done and everyone else throughout this process, finding you and bringing you to us for this final approval and things like that, is that we'll be able to do that. But it's just something that is just so important. I cannot stress that enough, how much trust we are putting in you. And so we really need to make sure that this partnership is the best that we can make it.
Absolutely. That's our biggest word there. We always use partnership. We select who we're going to bid. We don't bid every opportunity. If we go through the process and we don't feel it's going to be good for us, we walk away. We don't participate in every bid. We pick and choose who we're going to submit bids to. So when we go through that process, we want to make sure that it's the right partnership for us as well. And I'm proud to say that, in the state of Michigan, we have a 98% retention rate. So once we get a hold of you, we tend to retain you. So that's our goal as well.
Thank you.
Mrs. Smith.
I also want to thank you for taking on this challenge, for coming in, working not only with our maintenance department, but I also want to thank you for coming in because our prized possession is our children in this district, as well as our staff. Many of my colleagues know. I don't like, the pretty wrapping. I can get the wrapping from the dollar store or Five Below, but I like what's inside. I like Tiffany, as you see, I dress in, I want to make sure that you do what we need done here. Don't stand before us here tonight and say, well, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. We need it done.
Absolutely.
Our last company did not do their due diligence. And it is embarrassing that when we had a snow day, that we had our principals and our superintendent driving around, making sure that the snow was shoveled. And with us having a pandemic in this country right now, how to keep down that virus is to make sure that those rooms are clean. And now if they're making $16.50, then let's see them do $16.50 work. And I appreciate you coming out and giving us that information. But we will, as a board, we'll hold you accountable. So we thank you, and thank you for coming aboard, but we want our schools clean. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Walker, and then Mrs. Fox.
Ms. Fox was first.
Oh, Mrs. Fox then.
First of all, I'd just like to thank you for the thorough information that you provided for all 4 of the vendors. And I can tell you that I, too, believe that based on what I have read, that the ABM is the best vendor for Farmington Public Schools. I am particularly pleased to see higher levels of pay per hour for your workers. And then all of the other things, the good and things that you listed in that information. I also like the fact that I'm pleased to see that 2 minority vendors were considered, and I am pleased to see that. The last thing I'd like to know a little bit about, I read it, I don't know if I truly digested it, was how does the hybrid Farmington custodians, who are our custodians, can you talk a little bit about how that works, how you are recruiting, or do you already have custodians that you are going to hire through Farmington Public Schools? Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, I can. I'm glad you asked that. We have a number of candidates that came to the job fair that we liked, but we also had a number of both GRBS employees that previously were FPS employees that were interested in continuing, one being Deb King, who works here that you know. So those individuals that were recommended by teachers or staff or Lisa Boyce were looked at really closely. They were already vetted to work, so that helps with HR and a lot of getting them into the schools. But more importantly was how they fit with the schools. So as an example, if I'm in high school, we have an individual that worked there previously as a head custodian that knows the building. We tried to put people where they were familiar with buildings, and they were vetted and they were appreciated by the principals. We listened, and we listened to teachers that were writing to us daily. So all that being considered, most of the custodians coming in as head custodians know their schools. It's a vast majority. That's a plus for us. They don't have to be retrained. They know the buildings and can get them up to speed. And staff knows them, so it's going to be more comfortable with the switchover. So we have 17 new head custodians. We have 4 sub-head custodians that'll fill in for absences and do project work. And then we have 2 foremen at night that will simply monitor equipment use, move it around, sort of watch what the outside company's doing, and ABM knows that, and they're comfortable with that. They also have 2 head custodians at the high school that are working supervisors to watch over their employees as well, and a manager, which we didn't ask for, but they offered that, and she, I guess, is one of the best in their company. So really, there's no reason why they should fail. In fact, it should be stellar compared to other districts. And like I say, other districts are looking at what we're doing and watching how this works, but they're intrigued. So to answer your question is, yeah, most of them are people that have previously worked in Farmington that the staff loves.
Thank you. Mr. Walker?
Again, I would like to echo the comments of my colleagues, especially Ms. Fox, with the consideration for minority organizations and the amount of information that you provided for us. I just have one clarifying question, if I may, and that is under pros, you mentioned up to 70% staff in place by the week of February 21st. If you could just kind of explain that a little bit more to me, because it sounds like we're still looking to onboard more people, or just lift that up for me a little bit, please.
So the 70% is for ABM benefit. They brought this, all the companies said the same thing. It's very difficult to staff and get them background checked, fingerprinted, because fingerprinting is months and months behind right now. So the advantage with ABM is they've got a lot of staff. And when I say 70%, it's not our staff, that's going through HR. We'll have a full, we hope, Kathy Smith, we'll have a full HR contingent, FPS contingent in place for our group, but then 70% likely that first week for ABM, only because they're bringing people in. They're going to be employing some of the GRBS people that, they like, that they interview. It may be a little higher than that. We're not too worried because we've got that week, and as we go into the school year, we've actually staffed this to a standard that we have more custodians than we need or have had in the past. So even if we're down a little bit, the buildings will be clean, they'll be disinfected. We're not too worried. We'll have that in place. The goal is 100%. 70 is sort of a conservative number.
Okay. And with that being said, this may not be a fair question, and I apologize if it's not, but any idea when we would get to that 100% number?
I would hope as soon as possible, obviously. But we're already, setting up all the job fairs. We already have the requisitions. We're already looking to hire all the staff is now. So with the higher wage rates and our recruiting department that we have, I'm pretty confident that, we're going to get staffed quickly. It's just the concern is having that 2 weeks, which is, never heard of. So having 2 weeks to transition is very,
tight window.
Very tight. So,
Understood.
Trying to get as much staff as possible at that very beginning. The biggest thing is, interviewing the incumbents, making sure that if they wish to transition from the existing company to our company, giving them the opportunity to go ahead and get screened through us, get on board and get over if they want to. And then getting vetted all of our additional staff that could be shared from other districts if we are short, getting those resources shared and vetted through Farmington. That way they're available to pitch in and cover while we are staffing up.
DJ, do you want to mention also the incentive to come over for staff?
Oh, yes, we do have a $2,000 hiring bonus for all incumbents to come over. And we also offer a $1,000 sign-on bonus for all outside candidates throughout the state. So,
Mrs. Heinrich?
Yeah, just two things. One thing that was helpful to me, just to address the hybrid, as you explained, I think it was at the committee meeting, that the Farmington custodians are going to be the day custodians, and then the contract company is going to be the evening cleaning crew. So the differentiation there. And one thing, can you clarify, you said that you're going to have 2 supervisors for the night crew. Are they going to float between the buildings?
yeah, so we have 2 hourly lead supervisors that are what we consider working leads. So they work part-time and then they supervise part-time. They are going to be stationed primarily in the high schools, just because that's probably where the bulk of the staff's going to be. We do have a salaried account manager that's dedicated 100% to Farmington. They do not share other districts. They're 100% here. That person will be ultimately responsible for the Farmington account. Those 2 supervisors will just help alleviate some of that leadership and management role and oversight for her or him.
And because you're hiring new employees, because this is a new contract, then is there a training period for them? Or do you have that in place, or do you take seasoned employees and filter them in with new employees, or how does that work?
Yep, so their first day they are trained, and the goal is we are doing joint training during midwinter break with the district employees as well. And Farmington's also have vendors that are the existing vendors with equipment and chemical and all that's coming in and help train for that new staff as well during that week. But we do train our staff from day one. And if we do have any existing staff that wishes to transfer, we will sprinkle in seasoned employees if possible.
Okay, thank you.
And just to let you know, we have that whole week of training scheduled out right now in terms of, what we need to do as a staff. And in talking to ABM, that training will be together. I'm going to have a kickoff meeting Monday where I'll be there with the entire crew, including maintenance, because they're going to learn some of our maintenance skills. So it'll be a partnership, it'll be a team. There's going to be no like us and them type of thing. And that's critical to make this work. And quite honestly, I've looked at a lot of other hybrids, and the reason they don't work is because there's a division. And there's been a division here because work wasn't getting done. But going forward, it's going to be a partnership, and ABM was clear about that. They wanted that like we did, and so we're all going to work together. And to answer the other question, the foreman at night that we have, the two individuals, really are supervising. They're not going to go out and tell them what to do, but they're going to sort of check areas. They're going to give them equipment and supplies they need, and so, it's going to work, and that's never been done before in any other hybrid model.
And that was my question about, are they going to float between the buildings or
Yeah, so we're
station?
going to split the district north and south, so those individuals, they've already been selected. We're very comfortable with their personality, what they've done in the past. They'll be perfect fit for this job. And really, they're to watch over half the district and see what's being done, make sure buildings are clean, and report back. As well as the head custodians will take ownership of their buildings, which is what we're really looking at. They need to own their buildings and get after people that aren't doing the work when they come in the morning and see stuff not being done, so.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I want to especially thank our facilities department who have been monitoring, this process over the last couple of months. I know there was a process that we had to go through in order to address the disappointing service that we were, previously receiving. I also want to acknowledge the innovative approach that you guys are taking to, address the quality issue. I think that, issuing an RFP and expecting something different to come from the same old thing is, not going to yield good results. So I like this combination of FPS employees who are under our guidance and supplemented with outside contractors who you will continue to monitor and make sure that we're getting the service that we need. I really appreciate the livable wage that is being paid to employees so that we can recruit and retain good employees. So thank you all for what you're doing. We definitely want to see our buildings clean. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you both. And Mr. Barth can stay up there for the next presentation. We have a 2020 bond update, and I believe he's going to be joined by Mr. Scott Smith.
Good evening again. Scott Smith is with me from Plant Moran, and he's going to go through the dashboarding for January. We're on target. We've got a lot of planning in place for future projects. That's in the works. But also the bond work that's currently being done, the things that we're noticing on the field, we've done some walkthroughs. We've got a steam walkthrough in a couple days. So we're looking at future projects, what absolutely needs to be done. We have a certain dollar amount to spend to, obviously, with the taxpayer dollars, and we're putting every one of those dollars efficiently. So much credit to Scott, who's watching over this whole process with the dollars, but he'll walk you through where we're at right now.
Good evening, President Weems, members of the board, and Superintendent Delgado. Thanks for the time this evening. As you guys will recall, this is our quarterly dashboard update. The last time we did this was back in October, so it's been about 3 months, and we're pleased to kind of report some things through the end of the calendar 2021 calendar year. Do we have the dashboard available to pull up, Kathy? Everybody can read that.
We have it.
Looks a little blurry even with my glasses on.
Right here.
I'll read from the screen. This is our format in the upper left-hand corner. Again, this is just really a reminder of how the bond was allocated when the voters approved it back in March of 2020. So a large chunk of it is definitely associated with construction in the schools. But we also have set aside for some FF&E, which is furniture, fixtures, and equipment, a planned expenditure on buses, as well as a rather large allocation for technology and the technologies that continue to emerge, as well as the devices and things that need replacement rather frequently, just the way that technology evolves over time. In the upper right-hand side, this is really our financials to date. So again, you'll see under the budget column, a total bond of $98 million. We're now up to about $33.3 million in commitments, and that takes us through the bid pack 3, 4, 5, and 6 recommendations that we presented to you guys last fall through December. So that's about $17.5 million of increases since we last presented to you guys in October. And our actuals are now just north of $9 million. Those were up about $3.5 million from that time. And that's the continuation of the projects associated with bid packs 1 and 2, as well as some of the other expenditures as well. So we still have a long way to go, but as you can see, we've now, as far as the construction piece, we're roughly 50% committed of the budget. Probably as we work through the projects for this year, we'll approach that 2/3 mark, which we'll go over in a minute. We're just kind of at the early inset of the FF&E portion. We've made our first round of bus purchases, and technology is kind of sitting close to zero, but that's going to start kicking in here too. That usually lags the construction by a little bit as well. In the lower hand, you'll see kind of the projects, and this is really what's going on in the district. You know, and a lot of these projects aren't necessarily visible from the outside, so I think it's important to kind of just mention what they are. But we really still have work from Bid Pack 2, which is work over at Forest, Gill, and Lanigan, our elementaries. And this is work in the classrooms, and that will wrap up this spring. We're essentially doing renovation work almost on a classroom by classroom basis. So it's kind of a methodical approach, but we will be wrapping that up here late in the spring. Forest will probably wrap up a little bit earlier. It's a little bit smaller school. There's less classrooms. And then Gill and Lanigan will wrap up the next month. We're going to be starting work here in Farmington High School this month as well. We've worked with Principal Shelton there as well to kind of develop a plan to kind of get started before the school year ends. And then obviously a lot of the heavy lifting will occur over the summer. We'll also start our Bid Pack 4 work. We still really show a start kind of in April. Construction, as you guys know it, is probably still going to be predominantly a summer activity. But if there are areas we can get ahead and work second shift and not be disruptive to the operations of the school, we're certainly going to take advantage of it in this climate. And those will, again, be predominantly summer work. So Hillside, Longacre, Wood Creek, and really Power Middle School will follow the same implementation timeline. And probably the last package you guys recommended back in December is our district-wide signage. And that'll begin here late this spring as well once we get materials. We've got roughly 20 sites, so we'll start to coordinate, you know, the timeline for those as well. But those should start probably in May, and we hope to be done by the end of the summer. Those could drift into September, depending on the availability of signs. But we really hope to have those done for the start of school in the fall. And so, as John mentioned, now that we have projects for this year awarded, we're thinking about the next round of projects, and we've been working with Dr. Delgado and administration on what those projects are. So it's another full set of projects for next year. We're going to do work at Beachview Elementary, Kenbrook Elementary, Farmington STEAM Academy, North Farmington High School. We'll be working in this building as well. And then also our Vision's relocation to Farmington Community School. I would say Beachview, Kenbrook, Farmington STEAM Academy, those are going to be predominantly summer projects for 2023. North Farmington being a bigger school, being a bigger scope, that will extend outside the summer constraints and will be in probably the spring and potentially in the fall. We're still working through the scope to determine the actual schedule for that. Really all of these projects are very early in the design, so as the scope evolves, as we understand what the needs are, that's when we continue to kind of refine the process, refine the schedule, work through the details with the building principals and also the facilities team. For Vision's relocation, we've had a lot of great walkthroughs with that, a lot of great discussions, some great ideas that have come out working with the staff over there. And so that's probably a lot of breath tonight for some reason. That project's probably the furthest along in terms of design. We would really like to wrap that up this summer and get that to you folks for review, and then hopefully start that construction yet this fall. So another full year plan for 2023. I think budget-wise, roughly around $15 million, plus the work at Visions to FCS. So that's on top of that. So quite a bit of work coming up. And I guess with that, are there any questions I can help answer related to the scope of the bond for 2020?
Mrs. Heinrich.
Yeah, I had a question. You said you had the furniture, fixtures, and equipment category, you have it 0, but I just remember looking at the furniture for the boardroom and redoing that. Mr. Barth, was that a different, it wasn't bond money then, was it different?
The boardroom?
That was bond money.
It was bond money, so why didn't it show up in?
It's possible it could have came out of the 2015 bond. There's still a little bit of FF&E related to that bond as we wrap that one up.
Oh, so it's just not this bond?
Correct, I'm sorry. This is strictly for the 2020 bond.
All right, that's my newness still showing up, so thank you for clarifying that.
And the same thing can be said with technology. There's still some technology being funded out of the old bond that's wrapping up as well. And that's why, once that wraps up, then you'll start to see the expenditures come out of the 2020 bond.
Thank you.
Mr. Rich?
Thank you. Not a question, just a comment. Thank you so much for all the work that goes into this. It is great to see that we are out of the design and bid award part of all of these projects, and I see all that we're working on now is construction closeout, and then we have next year. So I know that it's a cycle, but it's great to see that the work is continuing, and we are looking forward to what projects we have coming up next. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Walker?
Yes, sorry I don't have the level of construction at each one of these places committed to memory, but my concern is what is the plan with supply chain issues, delays, things of that nature, to finish any construction that is significant in time for school? How do you mitigate that, or what is the mitigation plan, if any?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a real challenge in this market. It's something we're all going through, and it's something that really continues to change frequently. Really, the plan had started a long time ago. The first thing we did was really hone in the scope and get everything in front of you guys last year. And by reviewing it with you guys taking the action you did timely, that helps give us more time to procure these materials that we need in advance of the summer. The trick now is getting people to do what they were contracted to do, because they continue to bid work, even though Farmington Schools got out in front of the trend. We've got these folks under contract. Now it's just making sure that they continue to do what they are contracted to do while they continue to bid and procure work in other school districts for next year. So that's step one, is really to get people on board, and then also to identify those things. What are our long lead items? You know, we got generators, we got mechanical units that now are 25 to 30 weeks. You know, that used to be 8 to 10 weeks. So it's been a real challenge, but part of that is just understanding what's really critical right now and making sure we're hitting that and identifying that. We're working with McCarthy and Smith, so we meet weekly with them. We talk about the status of those things, those critical things, and they are continuing to push the recommended firms that have been approved to get that going. And I think at that point, you know, a lot of this stuff, as we continue to watch that materials be procured, you know, as we get into the spring, you know, how are things tracking? Are we expecting to get this stuff timely where we can proceed? If we know of a huge issue, you know, the worst thing you can do, and thankfully a lot of the scope isn't to just fully demolish the interior of a space. A lot of it's selective replacements, but we have some decisions to make. If everything's tracking right, you know, we continue forward. But the worst thing we could do, you know, at some point is to make a big mess and not be able to clean it up before school starts. So, you know, hopefully everything tracks well. We'll know more as the spring rolls on. But it is a constant thing to monitor, and it's a really good point.
Yeah, I would add that McCarthy Smith is dedicated to checking with the suppliers almost daily now in terms of what those lead times are, and there may be added cost because of the supply shortage. So they're monitoring that daily. We get reports from Aaron all the time about, you know, this is a better lead time now. I mean, they're really up to date on what our subs are able to get in terms of supplies, and
Okay.
we don't see any major hiccups looking forward, because it's getting a little better, but you never know. I mean, but at least we got somebody monitoring it daily.
It's something faced by every single school district. Just
Absolutely.
want to know how we plan to approach should it happen, and hopefully it won't. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mr. Smith, I want to thank you, Plant Moran, and also McCarthy and Smith. During my tenure on this board, I have not seen one time where you had to panic and get things up and running. I say this, and I don't say this often to many people, I trust what you plan on doing and what your work is and how it will be completed. Our buildings are state-of-the-art. They are beautiful. They are buildings that you want to take pride in when you bring guests in, and you want your neighbors that are, I don't want to use the word senior because I'm almost there myself, but the seasoned people of our community that see the work that you all have done. So I want to applaud you and thank you for everything. And I do trust that it will be on time, and I know that you'll get it done. We may not know that you're struggling because you never let us see you sweat, but I know it'll be done. And so thank you so much.
Thank you, yeah. One of the benefits of wearing a mask, I suppose.
Right.
But yeah, and things are gonna come up, and we're gonna work through them. And if it gets to a point where we need to communicate it out, that's where we feel like that's, at some point you just have to break the news, and we're always gonna have a plan, and we'll work through it. But we're gonna try to avoid those to the extent we can, and we think we're gonna be able to do most of that, yeah.
Thank you. I think there are no further questions, Dr. Delgado. Thank you guys for your presentation. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I would be remiss if I just didn't thank the community, again, for their support of not only the 2020 bond, but the previous bonds as well. We have beautiful new facilities and updated facilities that are now going to be spick and span and clean and prepared for the ultimate learning environment. And so we're really excited about every single one of these bid packs and appreciate all of the hard work from our facilities department and our partners in construction and architect as well. So the board will remember that we started this tradition this year of alternating board meetings, where one board meeting we have an update from our strategic planning subcommittees. You know, we have 5 overarching goals and 8 subcommittees. And then the alternating month, we have a presentation about innovation in our schools and in our partnerships. And so you are fortunate to get a double dose tonight of innovation and equity, starting with our wonderful strategic planning update. It's my pleasure to introduce our Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Dr. Goodrum, to present our goal area update. This is one of our subcommittees that is about leadership that supports equity and innovation, that obviously Dr. Goodrum and Dr. Coffin have an integral part in working with this incredible group that are going to present here in a moment.
Good evening, Board of Education and Community. I'm Dr. Goodrum, Assistant Superintendent for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and I'm here on behalf of Dr. Kelly Coffin, who, as you know, leads our phenomenal strategic planning initiative. So today, we are very excited to help you all continue to see what we're doing, and we have before us our Committee for Leadership for Equity and Innovation. And so I'm going to just turn it over to our co-leads, Shauna Greca and Anna Raleigh, as well as our co-chair, Mr. Rob Kaufman, and they're going to take it over from here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ravi. I'm Anna Raleigh. Good evening, wonderful board. We're so excited to be here, very excited about this work. It's been extremely rewarding, and very grateful for the community members, the parents, the teachers, the administrators, even some of our board members, our superintendent, central office, everyone who's been really supportive of this work. Without further ado, so we are the Leadership for Equity and Innovation Committee. And I just want to talk to you about the two major objectives that we've established as a committee. A lot of work and discussion went into really what our committee should be focused on and how to narrow down the incredibly broad and important topic of leadership that leads to equity and leadership that leads to innovation across the district. So the first objective that we've established and we've been working on is really identifying 3 to 5 components of leadership that foster equity and innovation. So because it's such a broad concept, and because sometimes, and we found it in our discussions in our initial work, that really everybody has a little bit of a different idea of what equity is, of what innovation is, and especially what leadership is, could be, looks like, etc. So that really was our first objective, how we worked on it. So you have stakeholder input, literature review. We looked at some articles and writings on the topic, and we looked at our district equity audit. That was really helpful in establishing some areas that we're doing really well in, some areas of opportunity, and really the why behind it. What we really are getting at too is the district-wide definition, of what is leadership, of equity and innovation. We want to develop leadership among all stakeholders. So moving away from the positional leadership. When we first started discussing this, many stakeholders really wanted to focus on the board leadership, the principals, the superintendent, maybe a little bit of the teachers were brought up in the mix, but we really came to a place where we're really understanding leadership as district-wide, all stakeholders, community members, parents, and especially students, which Sean is going to talk a little bit more in a minute. So with this work, this is what we've done. We, after many, many discussions, a lot of intense work, a lot of review, we've narrowed down sort of 5. This is by far not the complete and finished work, but we were able to arrive at 5 components with some descriptions, with some detail. I'm just giving you the cliff notes right now. But courage, honesty, transparency, commitment to equity, communication, listening skills, and thirst for knowledge. And this was like a synthesis of a ton of discussion, a ton of Padlets and surveys and various sources of work, and this is sort of where we are. And we've narrowed these down, and right now we're working on really developing examples of these components, what that actually looks like when a student leader or a teacher leader or a community leader exhibits these components, because we want to create something that we can use across the district that is not just information in a folder. We want it to be something that we can really use. So we're working on making this a useful tool that could be used across district, that we can grow into. At one of our meetings, Dr. Delgado mentioned something that was very exciting to me personally, and he just threw it out sort of where he's like, well, it would be great to have some questions that come out of, what does the leader for equity and innovation, look like, or some questions you could even ask people to kind of get at their leadership philosophy in this regard, that we could use at interviews perhaps. And just that very bit made me really think about how we really want this to be a real, this work that becomes part of our district processes, and yet something that we could really implement. So that was very meaningful to me personally. So we're really working on that. We're working on ways to assess these components, like what does that look like? How do we know we're there? And we're also working on obtaining more student input, because we didn't have students in our committee initially. We now have more students joining, so we really want more student perspective, which kind of leads into the second objective.
Do I need to change the slide or anything?
I think we can there we go.
Good evening. So yes, the goal is to really focus on leadership, because once we create a culture of good leadership, then clearly we can have equity and innovation follow with that. So really to get students more involved, to kind of get their input on what they think would be good leadership, I think would be very helpful, getting the community involved. We've come up with some different traits that we think would be good qualities in leadership. Our committee has come up with some great ones. So we really kind of took a different curve at the beginning of the year to kind of really focus in on the leadership portion to start, and hopefully create a culture within the whole environment. I think that's students, adults, community, the whole caboodle. You have to have that in order for it to all kind of trickle together. So our goal will be, again, getting the students more involved, the community, and really focusing on that leadership piece and how to implement that within the community to create that culture. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, so the second objective that talks about creating cross-district culture of equitable student leadership, and that came out of a lot of community feedback that really told us that students, very few students get to participate in leadership roles in schools, and they tend to be a certain profile of student, maybe students who are high academic achievers, students who are very outgoing, and the leadership roles, even though students can participate in, tend to be pretty scripted and somewhat limited, even though they do amazing work and we have some great programs in the district. But we found, based on community and student membership, and as a high school teacher, I can also attest to this, that there are students, we feel like there's so much more potential, leadership potential within our students that we could still tap. So this is where we are with that, is really getting more stakeholder input right now, really need more input from students. We've reviewed current leadership opportunities, so we've kind of took a stock of where we are with that, identifying some strengths, some areas of potential improvement. Okay, and I think, okay, and we're working on recruiting more students, gathering more feedback, and really trying to paint the vision of what this could be, what student leadership opportunities in our district could be. Where we are, where can we go from there? Could our students be more involved in school governance, curriculum development, areas that really impact students in a big way, on a daily basis, and having their voices not just in areas such as, maybe peer mentorship and homecoming planning and things like that, but really other more foundational kinds of aspects of school governance and curriculum. And we feel like that really works with our other objective of really taking leadership and making it less positional and more really cross district and really meaningful, and bringing student voice into it. Thank you.
It would only be right to say the process has been wonderful. I've had great growth and learning as someone who's supporting rather than just grabbing the reins and running with it, and watching these two really develop their own skill set. It's been the reflection that occurs on a regular basis, the patience, and really just the good questions that they ask. So it's been a real pleasure to be part of this committee, for sure.
Thank you, Rob, and appreciate
Thank you. We appreciate your feedback.
your trust in us and the patience and
Any
support.
questions for us?
Mr. Walker.
Just a brief comment. I love this, and I love the emphasis on the student voice. As a person who lives and breathes career technical education, I firmly believe if you want to prepare someone for the world, you have model aspects of the world. And this sounds so engaging for a student, so they get beyond just being plugged into core curriculum stuff, but they're applying it, they're connecting dots, they're living and breathing the process of education and learning. So just want to compliment you on the direction that you're walking in.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Blau.
I was going to say the exact same thing. I really appreciate the emphasis on inclusion of student voice in all facets of the work that you're doing. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Heinrich. Yep.
Just to piggyback on what my colleague said, just appreciation and the fact that you're drawing in from so many resources in the community and taking so much input from the community. And I feel like you're not only asking for the input, but you're listening and using it, and it's evident in the work that you're doing. And it's something that's going to be ongoing and incorporated into the culture, into what we're doing beyond just the time limit of the committee. And so it's something that's going to be ongoing, and it's just so important. So thank you. And just
Thank you.
Express appreciation for your work.
Mrs. Smith?
Mr. Kaufman, can you stand up close? So what do we do, Mr. Kaufman? We do what? We celebrate and not what? Tolerate. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this presentation. We appreciate your work.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
Great night.
And just to put a point on it, we know that all 8 of our subcommittees are under the umbrella of equity and innovation. This specific subcommittee, as you can see, focused on leadership. And I really applaud them for its leadership at all levels, whether it's administrative, teacher leadership, and certainly student leadership, and to really incorporate that. Now that we're into February, many of these subcommittees are getting to a point of the brainstorming and the input and the stakeholder feedback is now forming into actionable items that we look to launch into next year and actually put into systems and mechanisms. And We just talked about using some of these innovative questions for interview questions. So with every vacancy we have, every opportunity, like our wonderful new assistant principal, we ask questions about people having the right mindset and disposition towards equity and innovative thinking. And so we're really, really excited, and just the thankless, it's a thankless job to do these nighttime Zoom meetings and on top of your day job, but they're just such wonderful leaders, and we appreciate all of the subcommittees, and thank you for presenting tonight. And next up, who've been patiently waiting, we're very, very excited. When you think of innovation, you think of Gill Elementary. That's what I say. And so we are very happy to have Principal Chris Sullivan to present, along with her team, about innovative practices and student-centered learning happening at Gill Elementary. So take it away.
Well, thank you. Good evening, all. I won't pretend you're here to hear me, because truly, I think Dr. Delgado just summed it up best when you're looking at leadership, right? And he talked about all levels with teacher leadership. The people I have behind me, I could cry right now because they are utterly, utterly amazing. And so one of those traits was courage. And these are amazingly courageous people, because this year, in the midst of everything else going on, I gave them this quote: "What would you do if you knew you could not fail?" And I said, think big. And we've created frameworks of projects that we think big about. And I've told them nothing's too big, nothing's too small. What can we do? And so this presentation just highlights a bit. This is my 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade representation. My coach, unfortunately, had to leave for a family issue. She was going to be here as well, because she's been an amazing asset to this. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves and kind of take you through some of the things that we're doing at Gill.
Kate, you have to be more than the clicker. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, I will start with, I'm Kate Harris. I teach 5th grade at Gill. I kind of go wherever the need is. I like to switch grades a lot. I've taught all of them, pretty much.
In my 9 years.
In 9 years, yeah. In 9 years. So we're just talking about classrooms today where we want to put students at the center so that they're empowered and we get that engagement and that ownership of their learning. And we are just kind of making it personal and making it meet the students' needs. So Gill's 4 points of pride that we're really proud of this year are our student-centered instruction, cross-curricular project-based learning, thinking routines and metacognition, and our goal-oriented and reflective teaching and learning. So that's teachers and students. So we're going to talk a little bit about high engagement, and these ladies are here.
I'm Tracy Williams. I teach 3rd grade at Gill.
And I'm Cerelia Barbaro. I teach 3rd grade at Gill.
And in our PLC, lately we were excited when Chris was offering us the challenge to step up and to do some work within our literacy curriculum and to come up with some STEM-based activities. And we have been working on putting together prosthetic legs for our robots that are part of our book that we're reading in our literacy program. And we have worked on having children work with engineering. They're working in their math, they're working with math skills, they're working through social studies, we're working through all types of different cross-curricular academics to come up with problem solving. And the students have really been so excited. We've been excited to do it. It's been fun to plan them. Some of these have been big, some of them have been one day. And it's really been a great experience for us.
And a book that we would have never thought of doing if Chris didn't tell us with the quote, if you wouldn't be scared of failing, what could you do? And the kids love it. And there's a sequel and the kids are already jumping. Can we do the 2nd book? Can we do this? And like Tracy said, just a book that we can connect with every single subject. With literacy, with math, social studies, writing, reading, everything, it connects. We've done so many STEM activities and we could keep going. And it's been such a great experience for us, and it gives us more ideas of things we can keep doing in the classroom and things we want to keep furthering and pushing ourselves to keep doing.
And here's some more pictures. If you click on this one, the students will give you a little testimonial.
These are some of my students, Sadie and Kaylee. After we did another STEM project in October of Room on the Broom, the children's book, This was kind of our first step into the STEM projects. Oh, maybe.
Oh, no, that's the cutest part.
We'll see.
Hi, girls. Can you talk to me a little bit about your STEAM project on the wild robot?
Yes.
So Sadie, what happened first? What did you guys do?
We read the book and then some chapters, and then we made a wild robot.
You made your own robot? What did you have to do?
We had to use math and reading to figure out how to stand it up.
Ah, so you were challenged to make it stand up?
Yeah.
Awesome. Was it?
Show.
Is that more fun doing it that way, or?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So do you like doing projects like that?
Yeah.
You do those a lot in 3rd grade, don't you?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
And just doing stuff like this too, it really boosts the conversation we can have, and it just really deepens our sense of learning for anything we're doing. They can really have a conversation about anything we do after having one of these projects.
Can I interrupt for just a moment? I printed my materials out. I had no idea there were videos in there. Are there more? Okay, thank you for that, because now I'm in it, and I'm like, I press the button, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah,
Didn't know
so,
that.
I guess that's the next.
Thank you.
Virtual mini society is next.
I'm going to start clicking more often.
Hi, my name is Jessica Barduca. I'm a 4th grade teacher at Gill Elementary. For years, we've been using Mini Society to teach economic concepts to students, and when COVID hit, we couldn't quite do it the same way. I wasn't willing to give up Mini Society, so I wanted to work to create an online version of it for our students. Students created, students created virtual storefronts using Google Slides. They learned to use online resources at their disposal to create something fun and exciting for kids to purchase, such as word search creators, pixel art, and free game creators. Many sold their art, while others were inspired to share their musical talents, books that they've created, how-to videos, and more. The more difficult part, though, was the money exchange, how we were going to do that virtually. I did some research, and I found a system called Bankaroo. It was kind of like a kid-friendly Venmo of free money. And teachers could put money into the bank for students. The students could then exchange money with each other. And so we did it full grade level. Everybody was able to do it. The kids created Google Forms in order to place orders for the things that they have made and created. They linked everything right here on their storefronts. They learned how to adapt their products that weren't selling. We changed price points. They even created sales pitches while learning about supply and demand. It made it so shopping wasn't a one-day market day, and it leveled the playing field then for all of our students, everything being virtual. When you do Mini Society, kids are taking resources and materials from home, and so this way of virtual made it equal for everyone. An online Mini Society has so many relevant skills to today's world than I ever imagined, and our kids blew me away with their ideas and their willingness to adapt to my new online Mini Society.
So she's not going to toot her own horn. Go back.
Here are some of the things that the kids created. I did create a mall map essentially for each classroom.
So there's every store is hyperlinked in this map.
Yes.
So when you go to shop, you can select which store you want and go in and out of them all virtually.
So I kind of borrowed mall maps from different malls. And I linked the kids' online presentations through Google Slides with their storefront name. And when you click on it, it takes you to their store.
cool.
They fill out their Google form. It has pictures. And when the kids had to pay for their item before receiving it, they were a little hesitant on it. But it's all what we live in, experience right now in the virtual world with Amazon and everything else that we do. So every single 4th grade classroom had their own map. We still did all the components of Mini Society where you created a community name, you created a community flag, a slogan. Kids had jobs that they had to earn money for, and as teachers, we could pay them for the jobs that they were doing. And it kind of blew up. And the kids, it was trial and error. I wanted to do it, I kind of gave them, if you can see kind of here, like this template, I gave them some blank templates, showed them how to find their own pictures, how to add things in, showed them how to link, how to make their own Google Forms. And they quickly realized if they didn't put in an email address for their customers, that they weren't going to get that communication back. And we had to tweak some things, but it was a lot of fun. The kids' creativity was off the charts. They had so much fun for it. And we got to shop continuously. And when, we talked about supply and demand and everybody was flooding the market with art, what were some of the other things that we could do? You guys can draw really cute pictures, right? And you can post them, but what else can you do that's bigger with the resources that we have available online? So it was great. It was a really cool experience. Thank you.
Next. So cross-curricular and project-based learning. So all of this kind of lands in that world. But this is, how do I go backwards?
Miss Clicker.
What? I tried right-clicking. Didn't work. Oh, there we go.
Okay, just kidding, this is me again. So we're always looking for new and creative ways to display students' work. This was a virtual library that I created with my students' personal expertise papers. So they did a slide deck of a personal expertise that had all of the components of informational papers. And because we couldn't, print and pass around books, or some kids were virtual and some kids were still in the classroom, I decided to make a virtual library of their books. Many teachers were using virtual libraries to share resources of other books outside the classroom, but these are all resources that the kids have made. So every single fourth grade classroom has a book. When you click on the picture, it opens it up to the students' presentation, obviously, that they have created. Every teacher has their own, and then I just put them on a slide deck. So not only do we have a classroom of informational resources, but now we have a whole grade level of topics and things that kids can learn from, see what their peers are writing about. And this was just a way that I wanted to display it so that everyone had access to all of their work they've been working on.
And when I was putting together some of the slideshow, I ran across this and I'm like, Jessica, can you make this so I can make a copy? And I got right away putting our classroom's papers in there, because what a great way for them to look at each other's work. We did a fifth grade project. We had it in our science unit, our phenomenal science unit. Starts off with, it's about zebra mussels and interacting, our spheres interacting, and how it would impact if we took our water from the Great Lakes to California, and how those zebra mussels are impacting. So the unit is about that, but the prerequisite knowledge that you need is you need to know what the Earth spheres are. And so because we've been online and we're kind of new with phenomenal science, the kids didn't come with this prior knowledge, this prerequisite knowledge. So we went through and we had them brainstorm, what do you know about it? This is their brainstorm on the left. The middle is their culminating project of these are their posters, and they're drawing how they interact, what happens when, water interacts, when the hydrosphere interacts with the geosphere and you get a mudslide, or, so they really got, and at the end we do a thinking routine where they're really reflecting on their learning, and this is an independent activity, and they go through and what did they connect to, what concepts did they learn, what were the challenges, and how did their thinking change. So a lot of them were like, well, I always knew there was an atmosphere. I had no idea there were other spheres. And so now they're ready, and it's going to make so much sense when they go in and talk about the zebra mussels and how that's going to affect and interact together. The culminating picture, or the culminating project is going to be, we're going to have a baggie and just kind of say, how could we put all four spheres in this Ziploc bag? And so we're going to brainstorm how we can make that happen. So that was that one, and whoops. Uh-oh. Oh, that was a, here's a little bit about what these kids had to say. Hi, fifth graders. Can you talk a little bit about the learning experience and some of the activities we do to deepen our learning?
Some things we do is we talk with a group, so that when we go with a group, we can feed off what we're saying, what each other is saying. Or we just work with one partner and kind of help them out if they need it. We also, after we work with like a group and stuff, we sometimes like get to work alone just to like write down what we were doing. So then if we go again, we kind of like know what like we're doing ourselves. And when we go back to working alone, sometimes we write like on maybe a poster or just like a piece of paper what we've learned and done in our
And how does that help your learning?
It helps to like deepen my thinking and not just like think about the one lesson we did, like doing a lot of things with the one lesson. Yeah, like putting things together.
You want to talk about the Earth Spheres a little bit?
Well, with these Earth Spheres, we talked with like a few people in our group, and we made a poster. And we also talked with like the whole class and a teacher.
What were you trying to figure out?
Like what categorizes each sphere and how they interact.
What did you know before you started working on these?
Before we even did anything about the lesson, I didn't know much. I didn't even know there was any spheres. Yeah, I just thought they were one whole sphere or something. I didn't really know.
And now you know what?
There's 4 different ones and they interact in different ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like these posters we drew on them, like what the interactions were. And then after that, we went and did independent work with the...
Do you remember watching the mudslide?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wasn't that interesting? That really helped. And then you just do a thinking routine, reflect on your thinking. Awesome. Does it make the learning more interesting, or what do you think about that?
I think it makes that interesting when we do like posters and stuff, because if you just talk with a group, it's like interesting, but it's not as interesting as like showing your group. Yeah, like showing. I think it makes it more fun working with a group also, because you can like talk about what you're doing, and you can kind of like get ideas from other people because they kind of help you out.
Thank you for sharing your experience. And do you know our next step, we're going to be putting the... That was the spheres. I said that wrong. Okay, now how do I get that? This? Okay, there we go. Oh. There we go.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ron Johnson. I'm another 5th grade teacher at Gill. So this Pbl Initiative right here is our 5th grade final project. It starts with one big word. Each 5th grade student is choosing a positive word that best describes their personality and attributes. For example, courage, honesty, or leader. This goes along with our ongoing SEL lessons. The social studies connection, from there, they're going to research a current or historical figure that embodies and exemplifies their same profile. The ELA connection, they're going to conduct informational research, which is derived from our MESA units. This will be presented in the form of an in-person speech or a flip grid video. They'll have a choice of which one they want to do. In which the students will explain why they're presenting a Lifetime Achievement Award to their icon and make the connection to their personal lives. There's an art connection, which they create an artifact that goes along with their person. And in math and science, there's a connection. And possibly the most exciting part is the design and construction of their float, which will highlight the figure that they researched. These designs will certainly range from as small as a shoebox model to a full-out motorized vehicle with decorations. This will... I heard Chris talking about she might bring in a tractor, but I don't know. This will culminate in a parade that will lead us into our 5th grade celebration at the end of the year. So what I have here is stock photos, but if you all stick around and come by Gill and visit, especially at the middle of June, then you'll see the parade. So that'll be our end of 5th grade project. And I think we'll plan on doing that every year. Right? Yeah, I think this is going to be it. So thank you.
There we go. Right in Yeah. Add anything more on? There's thinking routines, but you can just, feel free to go through the rest of the slideshow at your convenience.
I did tell them 10 minutes. I just
There
want you to know
are
that.
more videos of kids and in the ACT learning, and we have some links at the end that give you more detailed information. So thank you very much for having us.
Mrs. Smith and then Dr. Blau.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am so excited about this, especially if Chris brings that tractor in. But I am so excited about all the work that you all have done. And when you said, when you do the little mini society, I'm going to age myself. My three daughters did this at Wooddale. And so when I was going through these slides, my youngest was home, and she says, what are you doing? I said, I'm looking at my board book. And she says, hey, they do mini society like we did at Wooddale. And I said, but it reminds you of, she said, they got Sims beat. Gill got Sims beat. This is where Sims got their idea, is from Gill Elementary and all of this. So thank you. I mean, I am so excited. And since March is reading month, when I come over and read, I will be coming in to see the work that you guys have and what you're doing. So thank you again. This is exciting.
Dr. Blau?
I am overwhelmed and overjoyed at what you are doing in your classrooms. I'm a teacher also, and apparently I'm not alone with all these crazy ideas I come up with and things I do in my classroom, and it is so delightful and exciting to hear the kinds of experiences that you're providing for our students right here in Farmington. So many of the skills that your students are learning and mastered will go on to serve them so well in both their personal and professional careers. Even just the reflective thinking. I mean, for a young student to talk about, it gives me an opportunity to think deeply. That they even are aware that that's something valuable and good to do is just amazing. I recognize that not all of the skills that they're learning and mastering are going to show up on our NWEA scores, and I'm glad you're doing it anyway, that you're not letting something like the standardized tests hold you back from providing these deep, rich learning opportunities for your students. It's also exciting that you have your students creating for real purposes and for real audiences, whether it's the fifth grade project and then the floats, and then they're not just creating for something they're going to turn in to get a grade. It's something personally meaningful that has personal relevance for the student, and the bookshelf thing. You know, they're creating something real that other students can read to learn from. Just phenomenal. And finally, to your principal, you are a true servant leader. In my 35 years of teaching, I've had one principal like you who said, what do you want to try and do, even if it fails, and how can I help? And kudos to you for having the courage to give your teachers the opportunity to grow and experiment in these ways. I'm just so grateful.
Mrs. Heinrich, Mrs. Fox.
I just sitting here listening to you, I want to go back to school and be in your classroom, and a teacher. Everything that Mrs. Blau said, or Dr. Blau said, I totally agree with, and just the different learning modalities. I mean, the hands-on, the creating, the sharing, the doing, and, just know that children are not just little sponges where you just give them information, they're actually experiencing it. Just a little tidbit about the mini society, I picked up on that also, because when my my children were at Flanders, one of my kids was a new teacher. It was her first year teaching, and they did a mini society, and I swear, because we lived in the neighborhood, whenever we'd walk through the schoolyard, her car was in the parking lot. I think she lived in the school because it's so much work. So just the way that you took it to the next level, and it's kind of a, we look at side effects of the pandemic because, that's really a positive side effect, and just how young people are so in touch with technology, and it's so ingrained, and you're talking about, the cash apps and things like that, that I'm resistant to. It's like the young kids do it and I don't, but it's just like our students are just so in tune of that. And so just kind of combining that. So I just am so excited for the work that you're doing and so appreciative because it's really going above and beyond, and you don't get overtime, and I just know that you put in a lot of hours in order to make this happen. And also and I just want to reflect on the culture in our school district that you have you mentioned the PLCs and talk about, and so you have the time built in for your teachers to actually collaborate and work together, because this can't happen with teachers working individually in their classrooms. It has to buy in, and our school district has to provide the time for the teachers to actually meet and share and brainstorm and come up with these creative things and being able to implement them. So thank you for your leadership, and it's all of that. It's just one piece of that whole picture that we're talking about, all the different layers on the strategic planning and the leaders in the district. And I could go on, and I just want to click through all the slides, so say thank you.
Mr. Walker.
Putting professionalism off to the side for a moment, this is so cool. This is so cool. And the best part about it, obviously, and it's been said numerous times tonight, is the level of innovation that you guys are bringing, the creativity that you guys are bringing. But having been a firsthand recipient of the wonderfulness of Gill, all the innovation in the world means nothing if you don't have people who love it, who breathe it, who sell it, so that the kids can buy it. And it has been that way. I didn't think it could get any better when my daughter was there some 9 years ago when Ms. Silliman came into our lives. But clearly, you're doing something over there. There's something secret in the sauce, because the staff, the commitment, the teamwork, it is an absolutely fantastic environment and a perfect way for a child to begin their learning experience. Congratulations to you, Ms. Silliman, and to everybody there. You're absolutely fantastic job.
Thank you. Thank you all. I really enjoyed this presentation. Please invite us in June if there's an opportunity for visitors.
Would you like to have the radio-controlled cars?
Oh.
I can give you radio-controlled.
That would be awesome. I'm definitely seeing some interest amongst my colleagues here. Furthering to Mrs. Heinrich's comment about PLCs and how important those are, I really truly appreciate how the school community is sharing and learning. And so I think I have a question for our central office team around how those PLCs work across the district, so that I could better understand how innovations like this, or those at Beachview or Wood Creek or wherever, how do we synergize those? And so that might be a conversation for another meeting, but I would love to hear more about that.
Sure, and to your point, it's the systems and the structures that create the opportunity, but it's the commitment of people like the ones you see right in front of you that make it happen and change the lives for kids and change the experiences for kids. And so we're so proud of you. And to look at the last two presentations and to connect it, this is what we want. This is coming together when you have leadership that is innovative leadership at the classroom level, at the administrative level, and that starts with this Board of Education. This Board of Education committed to innovative goals. You gave us the permission to take risks and to allow our teachers to take risks for the benefit of children, and this is the result. So thank you for all that you're doing for our children. And we have one final presentation, not to be outdone. When we think about all that we've talked about in the last hour or so, it really focuses on keeping students at the center of everything that we do and creating really authentic experiences for them. And you may have heard me and others say, as well as the two individuals in front of you, the idea of positioning our students and authentic tasks. And those are the two instructional goals that we have, is positioning students in such a place that they feel valued and that they have voice, and then performing authentic tasks. So tonight, it's my pleasure to introduce our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, Ms. Margaret Hendrickson, and Nanette Soares, who is our data analyst, or one of our data analysts, who who came to our last Board of Education retreat and did a lot of data literacy work with you. And they're going to share a middle of the year goal progress report update with you.
Thank you, Board of Ed. We are very excited, Dr. Delgado. We're excited to be here with you. And part of that is because we came to you in the fall and did an initial presentation on data. And we talked to you a little bit about how we respond to data. And part of that is tactical work and strategic work and innovative work. So what you just saw is an example of long-term work of innovation so that each and every classroom is truly student-centered. Every student is positioned well, and all that learning is authentic. And we should see, with time, those NWA scores, the PSAT scores, those MSTEP, those will come. We have to stop chasing the number, and we got to chase the experience for kids, because that is what's going to grow all those skills that we want to see in the lifelong learners that we create here in FPS. So the data that we are sharing today is just a snapshot of one assessment that helps us understand a bigger picture of the data and measures that we look at as we try to work to improve the system at the classroom, building, and district level. So again, my name is Margaret Hendrickson. I'm the Director of Curriculum and Instruction Assessment, and just so we can see.
I'm Nanette Soares, the Data and Assessment Coordinator. So we set 2 goals. You'll recognize them. They're the same goals we used last year to measure, using our benchmark assessment, whether our students meet or exceed expected growth in literacy and in math. And then legislation has us come in fall to winter and share our progress, and then we'll be back again in the spring to share our fall to spring data. So the benchmark assessment that we use in Farmington is our NWA MAP growth test, which gives us 2 sets of data. It gives us achievement data as well as growth. And remember that both those pieces of data are comparisons to students where their starting point is at the same grade level, the same time of year, the same assessment. So it's based off of norms from 2020, and so then we use that data as we move forward. So today what we brought you is our reading data, which includes our grades kindergarten through 9, and our math data, which includes grades K through 8. We're going to look at growth first. Our goals were based on growth. Growth, when we look at the numbers, is going to be about the percent of students who met or exceeded their NWA growth targets. Then we'll look at the achievement data, and when we look at those numbers, it's going to be about the percent of students who are in the high average band. And what that just means is that they're above the 60th percentile. And then legislation has us present our data aggregated for district, grade level, and subgroups. So let's look at growth first. So as you can see, for reading, this is the full district. So for reading, 49% of our students met or exceeded their growth targets for reading. And for math, 53% met or exceeded their growth targets. NWA is a norm test. And so what they tell us is that 50% of our students should meet their growth targets every year, and whenever they do their assessment, the 3 times. So we look at the data as a full group, but we also look at the subgroups so that we can figure out where do we need to focus our instructional practices in order to grow our kids, to accelerate their learning.
So as we look at, she suggested that as part of our requirement of our reporting is to look at subgroup data, which is historically what we've done in Farmington Public Schools. Again, 49% of our students met or exceeded their growth projections. And you can see here by subgroup how each subgroup performed in terms of their percent who have met growth. What's very interesting here is really how similarly we see our subgroups performing in growth. While there are still some growth opportunity gaps where we notice that there are certain subgroups, Black, African American, economically disadvantaged, and students with disability that have slightly lower percent of students meeting their growth, it is very interesting. Usually when you see gaps, you don't see this level of similarity in performance where you see the gaps. So you'll notice it's like a plus or minus 4 to 8%, depending on which groups you kind of compare to one another. So this is telling to us. It also tells us we still have work to do, but when 50% of students are expected based on the norms to meet their expectations, thinking pandemic and post-pandemic, hopefully we're going to be post-pandemic, that these numbers are actually pretty telling and are consistent with our numbers from the last school year when we were in remote and hybrid and in-person learning last year. We also broke it down by grade level. What is a celebration for us is this is actually the first year our kindergarten students took the NWA growth assessment. And we had 56% of those students meet and or exceed their growth projections. And again, as you look across the grade level, there's very similarity in performance across grade levels. Yes, there are some differences in performance. So once we get to the district, building, grade level, and PLC, we start to look at students and to see where individual student performances and groups of students' performance. So then we can take those next steps in our instruction.
And one of the new subgroups that we're sharing with you today is we were asked to look at in-person versus remote. And so if you look at, this is for reading right now, whether they were in-person or remote, they grew at the same level. 49% of our students hit their growth targets.
And it is important to note, as we just talked about the reading growth, and we'll continue to talk about mathematics, is to take a pause. That while 45 to 50 or 53%, depending on the subgroup or the grade level, met or exceeded their growth projection, it doesn't mean the other percent did not grow. So each student has an expected, as we talked at the Board of Education retreat that Dr. Delgado referred to, each student gets an individualized growth projection. And so for some, that growth projection might be 3, or it might be 15. It all depends. And so someone might have grown 14 out of 15, but not met their growth because they were one off. And so we have to understand that there's still growth we're seeing in all students, but those that met or exceeded their growth projections is what we're seeing here today. Yes.
Can you just help me understand, just a few slides back, you said it's, the expectation is 50% the norm?
Yes.
Because I was looking at this and I'm thinking the goal should be 100%.
Correct.
So,
Well,
but it's,
Yeah, our goal should be 100%. We want 100% of our students to meet and or exceed their growth projection. When you look at an assessment that's normed, it is normed on a bell curve. So when they identify their norms of, you're going to have most of your kids sit in this, in the middle of the bell. And so when they calculate the growth projections, they calculate it based on where 50% exceeded and 50% did not meet. And so they're setting the growth projection at that 50% mark. 50% will and 50% will not. But it's our charge, because we control conditions for learning, we control instruction and what we introduce students to in their learning experiences and their content to ensure that each and every students are not only meeting their growth projection, but exceeding. And that's where we get to not only focusing on growth, but also on acceleration, because that then moves achievement.
So I had a similar question to Mrs. Heinrich. So I wanted to kind of understand that norm a bit more. So that norm is from 2020, and so this is where I need you to correct me if I'm wrong. So the assessment or the NWA says we're comparing across all students who took this test. Is that in Michigan?
Nationally.
Nationally. So across all students who took this test, nationally, are we saying on average the norm is for 50% of students to meet their growth target. And so we're comparing our students to what nationally students have accomplished when they took this test.
Correct.
And so our 49, 53% compares to 50% across the nation.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that really, just looking at the numbers without the understanding and the explanation behind it. Yeah, it's just, so thank you for that clarification.
Mr. Walker, if you wouldn't mind, one more question. We just want to make sure that we're all level set here.
Yes, I appreciate that. Yep.
And if this question is either answered later in the presentation or maybe a later answer, I'm okay with it. But going back to the slide that had the subgroups, yes, this one, do we have, and I do understand that there has been growth, and thank you for lifting that up, even for the groups that did not meet the expectation. Do we have a mechanism that captures the level of growth that the subgroups did have from point A to now? And is that data that we can see at some point, just so that we can see how those groups are growing as you begin to devise methods to attack that?
Right. So thank you for asking that question, because I think that'll help clarify a little bit more about the data. And that's why I love that we've committed to retreats where we continue to come back to the data and develop group understanding of that, because NWA assessment is a challenging assessment to understand. So when we say here, for example, that 45% of our Black and African American students met their growth projection, that's telling us that they have grown enough in their RIT scores in response to instruction to meet that projection. I think, but those other, do the math for me, 55% still had growth. And so we can't capture what that level of growth is as a system.
Right.
So that's why we talk about how this system is this data is used at the district level, the building level, the grade level PLC, and the teacher. Because the teachers' grade levels can see exactly how much growth each individual student received, where they are, and then plan accordingly. There's not a way to systematically look at that for all of us as a district. That is the reporting. There's a huge depth of reporting that happens at the classroom level for the teachers to see exactly where is each student's achievement, where is each student's growth, what kind of learning targets to set for that students to help them grow towards that. We would not be able to disaggregate the data in that way at the system level.
Okay.
Mrs.
And that goes
Henry.
for both ends of the spectrum also, doesn't it?
Yes.
So it's the students that are struggling, but the students that are achieving, so they can see how they get those teachers to the next, students to the next level and get the teacher.
Because each individual student has their own growth target. So in a class of 30, some of your kids have 2 points they have to grow, other kids have 20 points to grow. So it is just a vast, so that's at the student level, at the teacher level, they can look at what the students need. But at the district level, we're just told, did they meet their growth target or not?
Did that help? Thank you. And we'll continue to revisit. It's important. Thinking visible, asking questions, that's what's going to help deepen our understanding and our group understanding. So as we look at mathematics, we're going to see that about 53% of our students met and or exceeded their growth projection. And again, we see our subgroups. You'll actually notice that our percent that met their growth projection in mathematics was actually higher than reading, as compared to probably what we've historically seen. And again, we're still seeing some subtle differences in some of the growth opportunity gaps, so we'll continue to dig into that data at the building, grade level, and classroom level. As we look again at grade level subgroups, again, about 53% of all students met their growth projection. And again, our kindergarten at 55% of students making that growth and never having taken this assessment before. And to see the number of students at 50%, grade levels at 50% or above is actually quite striking, particularly as you look at the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, because that tends to be a grade band. We've looked at historical data in Farmington before, where we start to wonder about students' performance. And what is great about this growth data, it is telling us where kids are starting, are we growing them? Are they responding to instruction? That doesn't mean they're all achieving at the same level, but we're all growing them. So there's equity in the amount of growth students are giving, but we will not say that there's equity in the achievement, as you'll see in the later part of the data, which is something we've historically talked about and we need to continue to work on.
And then talking about our in-person versus remote, 52% of our students met their projected growth target for math and 48 at the remote level. So again, both so close to that 50, so we're getting a similar performance, whether they're remote or in person. Okay, so our goals are written about growth and we've talked about growth. Now we're going to show you achievement. It's not required per legislation, but we knew you would want to see a snapshot of our achievement data. So we're going to take a look at that. So again, when we're talking about achievement, we're going to focus on those who perform at the high or high average performance bands, which is 60th percent or higher than the 60th percentile. So currently, 50% of our students are in the high average for reading. And then 47% of our students are at the high average for math. And so same thing, these data points then let us look at, okay, now we need to focus on how do we grow these kids to get, to help them increase their achievement? Where are our learning opportunity gaps as we look at the subgroups or individual students? So we do have subgroup data for you. So again, whereas when we looked at the growth data, you saw how close those numbers were. And then when we get to our achievement, we don't have that same closeness. So again, this right away tells us, where do we need to focus? Where do we need to look at what are the learning opportunity gaps? How do we find those just-in-time supports to help those students? And by focusing on growth, we can help shrink that gap versus just keeping it at the same level.
Carrie has a question.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry.
So I'm looking at my board members to see if I'm stepping ahead of anybody. So interesting point that you just made there with respect to assessment and growth. So our growth data shows generally that all of our students are sort of growing at the same pace, plus or minus like 2, 3,
Yes.
4, or 5 points. Clearly, we're not achieving
Correct.
at the same pace. Is there some way to identify where across our system that gap widens? Is it second grade, third grade, fourth grade, and maybe introduce some interventions at that level, at that point, to reduce those opportunity gaps in those areas?
I appreciate that observation. I think it was Dr. Delgado I talked to today about seeing growth beside achievement is very telling to us. And I actually talked to him about seeing where that intersection is. So let's look at growth and achievement in kindergarten, first and second, and where do we start to lose? And obviously, there's standard stuff you look at district and school improvement, curriculum alignment, instructional materials, fidelity of instruction, what are the variety of interventions in place. At buildings, they often look at, here are the kids that are at this place of achievement or growth, and we say, what supports have already been put in place? What has or has not worked? And that helps us drive some of those next steps of what do we have to do at a grade level, what do we have to do at a classroom level, what do we have to do at building level and or system level. So a lot of conversations around that is, why does growth, you'll notice with our students with disabilities, same thing. There's such a contrast between achievement and growth, and it's something we sincerely need to look at.
It's just interesting because just looking at these numbers without understanding, it's just totally different picture. And I like the fact that you selected high average rather than just average, just because it's setting the bar that our school district, we expect our students to. But it would be interesting to me to look at, if we looked at the performance bands, if we just looked at the average, and just see if there's a difference when we break them down. And so, what percentage of our students are average and then high average in comparison with that. I'm kind of a numbers person, so I'm just thinking of those things. But I just want to make the comment that this is good, this assessment data, but the piece before, and I've always said this as a teacher and reiterating, if we're focusing on the learning, and when we focus on the learning, then the test scores are going to follow. So it just takes patience and time and faith and just continuing to do, because if you jump on that bandwagon of, oh, what are we going to do about test scores, and start focusing on the test scores, then the learning goes down. And so it might look better on paper, but you don't really have the true learning. So just
Thank you for that.
kind of a compliment on there,
Thank
just
you.
to
Thank you for
emphasize
that.
that.
Appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
So I think we can go to the next.
Oh, other way.
Yeah. We know that you had asked previously about norming to 2020, and that doesn't show the implications of the pandemic. NWA is doing research to kind of look at that impact of the pandemic on the normed data and what that has looked like. So when we say that we need to look at this data in context of the pandemic, for example, we noticed during the state testing, this period for NWA testing, staff and student absences were in major flux. And so we know it impacted some of learner performance or learning environments in select classrooms and or grade levels. It's important for us to understand those contextual clues. It's important for us to understand those contextual clues of the whole pandemic. But that doesn't, we want to make sure it's very clear, it doesn't undermine the validity or reliability of this data to help us ask questions. We just have to keep that in mind as we look at the system data, the building, the classroom, PLC level, and individual student. As we really start to make decisions on that actionable data, we just have to make sure we keep that in mind. And I'm okay with looking at our scores today relative to the 2020 norms, because that was performance pre-pandemic. So we need to know where our students are compared to that time as we look to move forward and do learning leaps with our students. We always want to talk, as we talked at the board retreat, about opportunities and celebrations. What has been amazing to us is two things. As we respond to data, we need to think about the long-term, the big picture of instruction across the entire district, each and every classroom, each and every student. And all of our focus on innovation, positioning, and authentic tasks has really showed us where we have opportunity of teaching and learning gaps. And so we can really think about how do we support the whole system. We've really refurbished and refreshed our Marzano focus model, which is our teacher evaluation process, which is really helping us keen in on how do we best coach teachers with our instructional coaches, with building administrators, with our coordinators, as how are we supporting to grow each teacher each and every day. So there's big system work that we're working on to really improve the whole learning experience for students so that we can not have opportunity gaps. But we also do work that's tactical. So what can we do in the here and now to support students where they have some struggles? So last year when we looked at the data, next slide. When we looked at the data, we noticed challenges with foundational skills. And so we designed a series of professional development series that started in November, December, through the end of the school year, into the next school year, around some new supplemental instructional resources, sound walls, secret stories, decodable text, striving readers. These are topics that our teachers are doing after school with flexible learning options, which we shared with the board in one of the Board of Ed briefs. We're creating these flexible learning options for staff, and the participation has been fabulous. So we want to do the big strategic work, the big planning work to really move the system, but we also have to do tactical work to help the here and now. And so foundational skills is one of those areas that we've been targeting in response to the pandemic. The other area, middle school math, has historically had some data that we wanted to respond to last spring. So we actually created formative assessments as part of each unit at the middle school level, working with the ILs, the instructional leaders in those areas to really support just-in-time and learning for our students. We know that there are questions about how we're responding to the pandemic and how we just respond to student needs in general, no matter what the year. And so as part of our MyKIP school improvement process, we really look at the whole learner, child, each and every adult in the system, and the system itself. All of us are learners in that system. So as we identify needs, we then come up with plans. And those plans can be strategic and tactical. But we have a variety of sources of funding that can support that work, from Title II to Title I to Title IV, to ESSER II, to ESSER III. And so we're working on a coordinated plan across those resources in order to meet the needs now and in the future. And just so you all know, and I think Gill is a prime example, is we're rebounding. We're not returning to the old normal. And that's it.
So, love this presentation. This is what this board has been asking for, data, disaggregated data, the conversation. Really appreciate that. I know that several board members had questions, and I know that Mrs. Heinrich submitted some questions.
Yes.
And many of those got answered, but I wanted to offer the opportunity for any board members to ask any additional questions that they might have. Thank you all for the conversations, for the questions. I know this is a subject of huge interest to everybody. Okay. If there are no questions, then that would conclude this presentation, and it would also conclude district updates. At this time, given the hour, I just wanted to check in with my colleagues to see if anybody needed a 5-minute break. Are we okay? We're okay?
Oh, I'm okay.
Okay. All right, then we'll press on. We will move forward then to reports from board committees, and we have one from Mrs. Heinrich on the Finance and Facilities Committee.
Right.
If I may, as Ms. Heinrich's pulling up her Finance Facility Committee, I just wanted to thank Nanette and Margaret for their presentation and for their analysis of the data. You know, a common misperception is that when school districts have innovative programs or creative, out-of-the-box thinking, that we don't follow standards or we don't follow the prescribed curriculum. It couldn't be further from the truth. We're actually using the curriculum as a basis for the innovation. And so that's something that I agree, as the teaching practices and as the instructional professional development continues and the really risk-taking flourishes, the scores will come along with that. So we're setting the systems in place and being thoughtful about, at the very beginning of my comments, I mentioned that we're talking about analyzing right now in the middle of the school year the efficacy of last year's intervention efforts and planning proactively for next year's and the years beyond. So thank you to Margaret and Nanette for that presentation.
Thank you. The Finance Facilities Committee met on January 31st, myself and Mr. Walker. We learned about the custodial plan, and thank Mr. Barth for clarifying and presenting. We really had a lot of questions, and he was very patient and really explained it very well and was very helpful. And I think he did a good job tonight explaining it to the community. There's going to be a presentation on the purchase of interactive flat panels for our classrooms, and Whitney Taylor, our instructional technology coordinator, and Patrick Gregory, a senior technology coordinator from Oakland Schools, really did a lot of research, answered a lot of questions, have a very nice presentation that they're going to share with us during the discussion items tonight. And it's also going to be an action item. And the reason being for that is that we're only having one board meeting in February due to the winter break, because we're asking that we have a 2-meeting protocol for these things, and there's a reason for that. But it's a very well thought out presentation, so we'll hear more about that. And the other thing is, that was it. Future agenda items, we're going to ask for a report on the ESSER III funds, how they're being used, and also it was talked about tonight, but part of the strategic planning, talking about facilities capacity and utilization, to keep up on that also, which I think that our district is doing a good job on. So thank you to the committee, and look forward to the presentations on the discussion items.
Thank you, Mrs. Heinrich. We are now ready to move on to discussion items. Do we have someone to review the interactive flat panels for classrooms bid and award recommendation?
Sure do.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Good evening. I'm Wes Prescott, Director of Technology, and I have Amy Cecina with me from Plant Moran. So we're going to talk a little bit tonight about the interactive flat panels. And I'm going to take us back a little bit. I'll be brief. I know it's getting late, but would be remiss if I didn't express all of the work that's gone into getting us here tonight. So about a year ago, we were looking at the bond, well, not about a year ago. Part of the bond is always, as Scott Smith had mentioned, the technology portion of the bond has a fairly large allocation. And part of that is to replace current technology as it becomes obsolete. So about a year ago, we started looking at what we were going to do for classroom AV technology. And we landed on interactive flat panels as the next iteration of classroom AV technology that we wanted to put in place. So for the past 9 months, Whitney Tyner, Patrick Gregory, Amy Oliver, Amy Garbasek, Nanette, and Jim White have gone around the district. There have been pilots of interactive flat panels in each building. They've gone through and done demos. They provided teacher feedback. They've really spent 9 months out talking to teachers and listening to their needs so that we can best put in place a solution that's going to work for them. So that brings us to where we are tonight. We went through the bid process. We received bids back. Amy and her team went through and did a great job of evaluating and breaking them down. And we're looking for approval to move forward with purchase of smart interactive flat panels from VSC for just over $2.7 million. The plan would be this summer, the elementary schools would be upgraded, and then next summer, the secondary buildings would be upgraded.
Are there any questions? Dr. Blau?
I just am wondering, what are the advantages to making this change from the existing smartboard technology to these interactive flat panels?
So most of the classrooms now have projectors, and projectors were great. They were meant for a specific purpose, to project something onto the screen. The interactive flat panels accomplish that and much more. So they have a lot of built-in features. Students can share their work directly onto the screen. They all have, touch capabilities. You can write on it with a pen. They have an infinite whiteboard that is digital that you can save and upload to the learning management system, which is Canvas. And so your traditional, I'm going to write on my whiteboard. If a student's not there, I might have to take a picture of it, or they're going to miss out on that information. And when I'm done, I have to erase it. On one of these, you can keep it, you can save it, you can share it. Students can go back and review it at a later time. And that's just one of the advantages. The other is, obviously, in a classroom, you can see the projector looks quite a bit dimmer than the interactive flat panels that we have here. So that's another huge advantage.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Heinrich?
Yeah, just some of the questions that I asked, and one of the things, because you're a classroom teacher, Dr. Blau, so I was like, so you're going to put this flat panel in the middle of my whiteboard, and so how am I going to use a whiteboard? And so they answered that, so that they write on it and save it with the whiteboard. And then I asked about the document cameras and everything that runs through the computer, they project through the screen. And how big are these? I asked about that also, and they're pretty big.
Yep, we measured it, looking at the projected image on a projector now to go to the interactive flat panel that we're projecting, I think you lose about 3 inches. So about that much space on the diagonal. And yes, to the question about the whiteboards, that was a concern of teachers. And once we showed, the capabilities and essentially the unlimited, you can zoom in, zoom out, move things around, and it truly is an unlimited whiteboard. They were by and large pleased with that.
And one of the things that I was impressed in their presentation is they took the different panels into the classrooms and had the teachers use them, and they had survey questions, and they collected data, and they did research, and it's like, what did you like about this one? What did you like about that one? And, what are the features and things like that. So really a lot of input from the people that are going to be using it rather than just, this is what we think that you should like. They ask the teachers what they want. So a lot of teacher feedback. And you also talked about there's going to be training and professional development that goes along with it also, rather than just say, here it is.
So
watch
So
a
one-
video, they're gonna.
One thing I do want to mention is when we started talking about this a year ago, the conversation would have stopped. The first thing we asked was, is there going to be a commitment to training and to providing professional development and teaching people how to use these, as opposed to just an hour, at the first day back or in August, hey, here's how you do some of the basics, go figure it out. And we had determined that if that was going to be the case, then there's no reason to even proceed beyond this, because it's not going to be successful. So we committed to, the technology and the instruction department committed to providing that PD so that they are useful and they are getting used and the teachers feel confident and comfortable being able to use them in their daily instruction. And some may not get beyond using it as a projector, and that's fine. But there are teachers that will take advantage of, and as word of mouth spreads and teachers see what other teachers are doing, that kind of feeds.
Mr. Walker?
Having the opportunity to listen to the presentation and then going back and watching the recording of the presentation was really insightful. These boards create a very collaborative environment for the kids in the classroom. My question is about one-to-one technology for our students. Are we at that place now where all of our students in the classroom have that one-to-one? And as we begin to shift more and more away from our traditional methods of students performing work, the concern I have, and this is maybe just for a future item or thoughts down the road, is the digital divide and the technology students have at home, that if materials are being saved and shared in that fashion, how does this translate to any work that they need to do at home and their ability to get that work back to the teacher and just close that educational loop, if you will?
Yeah,
I don't know if
so-
that's something you need to answer now. I just wanted to put that out there.
No, I can speak to it a little bit. So if you'll notice in the presentation that was recorded or in the slideshow, one of the first slides talks about tequity. And that's been a huge focus of the tech and instruction department over the past year and a half. And it's really looking at how do we provide that opportunity to all students. Some students in all districts, there's some students that'll have a device at home, there's some that won't. So what we've been tasked with is how do we bridge that? Can students take their devices home if they need to? And the answer is yes. In some buildings, and so we're working on putting shifting the mindset of buildings in the district to being able to be comfortable with students doing that. There's some that are really comfortable with that. There's some that aren't as comfortable with that. If I send it home, is it going to come back? And so setting those expectations and having those conversations, I think will go a long way to addressing that.
And I know this is a process we're going to evolve to just as like we used to take textbooks home throughout the school year and then turn them in at the end of the school year.
Yep.
But just as long as we're thinking about that, that makes me feel really good. And I love the panels. They're fantastic.
Awesome.
So,
Thank you.
Just to piggyback off of Mr. Walker, yes, I'm so glad that all of our students who need a device have a device, and I was extremely pleased and proud, frankly, of the fact that in 2020, there was an effort to ensure every student who needed a device could come and get one. There was a very quick line for students. I witnessed, they can come up, get a laptop, take it home. My question is, and that's not for this meeting, it's a separate discussion, is, that wasn't our original plan back in 18, 19, right? We just happened to have enough devices for all of our students who needed one. So now that we've moved to this one-to-one ratio, what is our plan for refreshing those devices? And have we included that in our budget to, from now on, make sure that we can continue this one-to-one? So, not related to this specifically, but I would like to make sure that that's something that's being considered.
And it is, yes.
Okay, perfect. Mrs. Heinrich, I saw your hand up.
Did you talk about, I didn't realize that these were the flat panels, but the adjustable, because you shared with us, you shared more information in the
Yes.
meeting, and I just want to make sure you highlight, but the ones that are on the whiteboards, the mounts are going to be adjustable so that they'll be able to go up and down.
Correct.
I live in a tall world, and so I can reach everything, but they'll be able to lower it and raise it depending on the.
So one of the other things in the presentation was there was some strategic conversations that went into how are, okay, we're going to go with these, but what is it going to look like in a classroom? Is it going to sit on a cart like this? Is it going to go on the wall? Is it going to be on a, height adjustable that you have to lift up and down? Is it going to be on a mechanical height adjustable? So we have a lot of different, installation options. And while we're trying to be consistent, what might work in a second grade classroom might be different than what a high school classroom is going to look like. What might work in a science classroom is going to be very different than what might work in a music classroom. So we had those discussions with all of those different groups to get their input before we, put this proposal together and asked for bids.
I am really pleased by the fact that there was a lot of input from teachers in this decision, and it's not just purchasing technology for purchasing technology's sake. I recall years ago when there was this move towards smart boards where some people used them and found a lot of value in them and some people didn't. So I really appreciate that, and I particularly appreciate the opinions of my colleagues here who are actually teachers and have, actually participated in a discussion on this. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
Yeah, and I do just want to say, that's gone through, we've worked intentionally to build the relationship with the technology and instruction department. We meet weekly as a group, but there's conversations that happen daily between our teams. And you don't see that in every district. So I really value that here. It's awesome, and it's really refreshing because it leads to much greater things.
Thank you so much. Are there any for Mrs. Heinrich?
Did you talk about the timeline too, that you're going to do all the elementaries?
Yeah, so all the elementaries will happen this summer, and then secondaries will happen next summer.
So that within the buildings, it'll be equitable. It won't be, oh, you got yours, but I don't get mine until next year. So they're all one. So they'll all be able to learn together and grow together.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You are up next, I think.
I am up next, so I won't leave. The next one is the district firewall. So again, this was built into the bond. It was planned for. We did, with a lot of our projects, we've been trying to figure out as many ways as we can to maximize the funds that the community has entrusted us with. So one of those projects is this project. So we've utilized E-rate funding, which is a government program that will reimburse certain equipment, technology equipment. You'll get a rebate on what you purchase. So a firewall will get about 25% back off of the cost. This recommendation is going to be for a new firewall with a 3-year software subscription for just over $61,000, and we'll potentially get, once it's approved by E-rate, we could get up to $15,000 back.
Seems like this is a little less tantalizing than the than the flat panels here. So,
but no less important.
No less important.
Right. Yep. Correct. I mean, so your firewall is your gateway to the internet. It protects people going out and coming in. So everything passes through that.
Right. Any questions on the firewall? Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Very nice. All right, next we have Board of Education resolution in support of the IDEA Full Funding Act. Dr. Blau, would you care to introduce this one?
Yes. I move that the Board of Education approve the board resolution in support of the IDEA Full Funding Act.
This isn't an action item. This is discussion. We're in the discussion item part. We're not.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, not the motion
Not the
itself.
motion.
I apologize. Just
That's
like
okay.
tell us what this is about, how this came about.
Okay, so as I explained during the legislative update, this is a board resolution from, put forth by our Farmington Public Schools Board of Education in support of the federal government fully funding its commitment to the support of serving our individuals with disabilities in our district and throughout the state. As I mentioned earlier, in 1975, the federal government put into law the Individuals with Disability Education Act, or IDEA. with the stipulation that the federal government would provide 40% of the national average per pupil expenditure. Unfortunately, all these 45 years later, IDEA is only being funded federally at a rate of 14%, and we are asking that Congress approve a 10-year plan of gradually increasing its financial commitment to the level that was originally promised back in 1975. A contingent of educators will be going to Washington, D.C. on March 9th to hold a meeting with members of our federal Congress, and we would like to send them with this resolution from our board to demonstrate support for this action.
Thank you, Dr. Blau. Any questions on this one? Mr. Ridge.
Yeah, so I guess my main question is so let me first start by saying I totally understand why we need full funding for IDEA. That's extremely important and all that. My question is the purpose for this particular resolution and the reason for our board to be the ones putting this resolution and passing it. And so it's the reason for it being added, especially because of the 80 or so co-sponsors of this act, both members of Congress for our district, Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence and Congresswoman Haley Stevens, are co-sponsors. So we need to at least acknowledge that our district personally has strong representation in the United States House of Representatives, pushing this legislation forward as signed-on co-sponsors of this bill.
Right. You're absolutely right. Our legislators asked districts for their support.
Our legislators asked for?
I don't know if there was our legislators.
Dave Randall spoke. Let me take a look at my notes.
Okay, so the lobbyist for?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
He asked that as many districts as possible do something of this nature to show additional support. They want to come to Washington, D.C. with a stack of resolutions to further convey, our strong feeling about the need for this to be fully funded.
Okay. I just wanted to make clear that, for us personally here, Oakland County as a whole, I believe, all but I think one of the representatives that represents Oakland County as a whole federally are co-sponsors on the bill. I'm just saying that we do have that support, especially when you look at the education staff for some of these members of Congress to have gone to Warner Middle School. So we do have that year, we do have that support. I just wanted to make that clear before going into this as passing a resolution.
Also, it is the K-12 Alliance that is helping to sponsor this meeting in Washington, D.C.
Thank you for that background, Dr. Blau. Oh, another question.
No, and just to piggyback on what my colleague said, that before Dr. Blau brought this up, I read a lot of, news streams, and there was asking for support from school districts for this. So I saw that out there, and then we're doing it. So it's something that I think that we're hoping that all school districts across the United States are going to do. And so we're just joining in that support. And I asked a question. I said I thought we were supposed to be non-political, but this is not really that. It's supporting.
This is a bipartisan.
Yeah, it's supporting. Yes. So I wanted that clarified, so I appreciated that.
Yep. Okay.
So will we move forward with the resolution in spite of the fact that we do have other legislatures in our area that are doing this? I'm just trying to get here a feel. Are we going to vote or whatever we're going to do in terms of this particular request?
That is the recommendation. So it is listed as an action item on today's agenda.
Okay.
Okay.
As Ms. Heinrich was pointing out, this is a national effort. And I would love us as a district, even though we're being represented legislatively by our representatives here in the state, I would love for us as a district to officially say yes, and we here in Farmington Public Schools, we are in support of this as well.
Mr. Walker. Mr. Walker, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to also add that I think this is a part of the good work of a board such as this, that we're supposed to be involving ourselves, staying away from, partisan type of issues, of course, but we're supposed to be involving ourselves in legislative initiatives that would support the students and the district in which we serve, And I believe that something like this is that really good first step in that kind of overall attitude and culture shift that we're working very hard to do, and a part of the work of the legislative committee, at least in terms of bringing these ideas for us to have these kinds of discussions as well. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. If there are no further comments, I think we're ready to move to our next agenda item, which is public comment. So if there are any members of the public who would like to make public comment, please fill out a card and bring it to the ceramic bowl. Mrs. Staron, would you mind checking to see if we have anybody in our overflow room? While we're waiting, we'll bring up Mark. I always mispronounce this. Is it Forche? You're not the first one. Okay. Mr. Forche, and then we have David Villar. Mr. Forche, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. My wife and I are on a quest to educate ourselves about the education system. So this Saturday, we met with 2 friends of ours with Cheryl Blau, and she was very personable and informative, and we'll probably meet again. And so we appreciate that, because there are some fuzzy things we don't understand as of yet. And also last night, Bobby Goodrum called us, and we appreciate that. And we hope to meet her in March. She's very busy, we know. But my wife and I appreciate that people within the system are doing things, reaching out. And so we appreciate that.
Thank you. David Villar? And then we have Jennifer Krager.
Good evening, everyone. I was listening to you speak about the NWEA test scores and the direction that you're taking the district in handling those testing levels, the disparities and whatnot. As a parent, and I was a teacher for about 8 months in Oak Park School District. This was a while ago. From my limited experience, and I apologize in advance if you guys already have this information or if you've already implemented this suggestion. But I think, one, you should get surveys from parents where the students are struggling. I would get a good amount of responses from the parents. And then from those responses, look at the top 5 concerns that the parents have, whether those concerns are about the students' focus, there are any issues that are going on. Maybe make the surveys anonymous so that the parents don't feel that they're exposing themselves unnecessarily. Once you have those top 5 concerns, perhaps the board and some other specialists can address those concerns, because I'll be the first to tell you is that each classroom can have a different dynamic than the next. And I would imagine that each district would have a different dynamic than the next, even though you can see trends across states and regions. I think this would be very helpful. Some of the stuff with the diversity, equity, and inclusion are important, but the STEM-related teaching and the quality of that is also important. And if there's a way that we can start to encourage kids who are struggling in those areas to be more motivated. I know that you guys did have special programs. I remember from the summer programs and whatnot, that's great, but there needs to be more of the integration aspect of this. I'm just one parent, but but I imagine a dozen others would probably want to take a leadership role in this if they felt that the district was engaging them. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Krager.
I have an article I'd like to pass. Let me know when you want me to start.
You can start whenever you like.
Okay. My name is Jennifer. I've been here before. I know you've heard me many times, and I'm here to smile at you. I would love for you all to pull your mask down and to smile back at me. I would love for our teachers to be able to smile back at the children. We had amazing teachers here at Gill that gave their presentation. And Ron Johnson is an awesome man in the district. And he gravitates kids towards him, and you can't see his smile. He is the biggest, happiest, most welcoming smile that you could ever imagine. If you have met him and spoke with him without the masks, he's amazing. So Ron, I'm just giving you props because he's a great teacher. Our teachers have given back so much, and they're working so hard. I'm asking that you remove the mask mandate from our children. What we're doing is not working. My children are suffering. My 2 children are coming home depressed, tired, fatigued, frustrated. They can't hear their teachers. They're mumbled. They're overlooked. There's no engagement. We were created in God's image to mirror other people. At birth, children look at us, and when we smile at them, the baby smiles back. We are not seeing smiles of children. I have a 6-year-old in my office that I work at in the elementary. She comes in every day. Amazing, spunky little kid. You would never know by her facial expressions, she's missing 4 front teeth. And she pulled her mask down one day, and she's like, "Look at Mrs. Krager, I don't have any teeth." And her grin was so big and so cute, but these teachers aren't seeing it. Why aren't we fighting for our kids a little harder? All of you have been elected, and you're doing a good job in many things, but you're not doing enough to unmask our children. Lawsuits are the only way that we are going to make this removed. Our Oakland County Director is being sued in 2 different ways, and if you haven't heard, from Troy Public Schools and also from Walled Lake. Within the week, he could drop the mask mandate because he has a lawsuit against him. I am willing and I am ready to start pushing forward to start doing legal things if you do not start reconsidering fighting for our kids. I'm asking you to remove the word mandate. Remove the word mandate and allow the people who want to wear a mask to wear one, and to allow the children who cannot, who will not, and who struggle in school. They're struggling emotionally. All this data and the statistics that you were showing earlier is awesome, but you're forgetting an emotional side of the health. In this article I gave you, it talks nothing about the psychological damage that we are doing to our kids. This needs to be the first and foremost thing you guys are starting to fight for. Academics is super important. It's one of the most important things you can do. But if a child's well-being and their spirit has been rejected because they aren't seeing the smile on a teacher's face, teachers don't want to teach in a mask anymore. We've been doing it for a year. Please give us the choice. The choice to move on, the choice to teach freely, the choice to interact. It's really important. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If there are no further public comments, I see no more cards. We will close the public comment period. We are now closing the public comment period for the 3rd time. I see no one rushing. We are closing the public comment period. Checking with my colleagues, I think we are doing okay. All right, we're going to move on to action items. The first action item is related to the MASB Board of Directors election, Region 8. The board unanimously nominated Angie Smith as the Region 8 candidate for a 3-year term on the MASB Board of Directors at the January 11, 2022 regular meeting. Is there a motion? Mr. Rich.
I move that the Board of Education cast its ballot for Angie Smith for the MASB Board of Directors Region 8 election and authorize the Superintendent's Office Executive Assistant to submit the ballot.
Is there support?
Support.
I'll go with Dr. Blau. Motion made to cast the ballot for Angie Smith for Mashpee Board of Directors, made by Mr. Rich, supported by Dr. Blau. Is there any discussion? Mrs. Smith?
I accept this. I am very humbled to serve not only for Farmington Public Schools, but for the state of Michigan if I do win this. I have had several counties reach out to me and tell me how they are supporting me on this. And so many people have reached out to help me with my campaign. If this position does become mine, I promise, and I don't make promises, but I will promise to make sure that we are all looked after and taken care of in this community and the other other 5 counties in the Region 8. Thank you so much.
Thank you. With that, Mrs. Smith, would you do a roll call?
Yes. Dr. Blau?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Heinrich?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Rich?
Yes?
I myself, yes. Ms. Weems?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That motion indeed passes. The next one is for the purchase of interactive flat panels for classrooms. Mr. Walker?
I move that the Board of Education approve the bid award as outlined in the January 31, 2020 letter from Judy Wright, Plant Moran, for the purchase of interactive flat panels, or IFPs, and services district-wide to VSC in the amount of $2,725,689.56, with funds to come from the Capital Projects Building Site 2018 Fund and the Capital Projects Building and Site 2020 Fund.
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Walker, supported by Mrs. Smith, for the purchase of interactive flat panels for classrooms in the amount of $2,725,689.56. Is there any discussion? Mr. Rich?
Just a point of clarification. I'm not sure if I heard incorrectly, but it is the January 31st, 2022 letter, not 2020 letter, as was said.
Should we restate the motion?
If you could, please.
You'd like me to? Okay.
Mr. Walker, would you restate the motion?
Apologies for any mistake. I move that the Board of Education approve the bid award as outlined in the January 31st, 2022 letter from Judy Wright, Plant Moran, for the purchase of interactive flat panels, or IFPs, and services district-wide to VSC in the amount of $2,725,689.56, with funds to come from the Capital Projects Building Site 2018 Fund and the Capital Projects Building and Site 2020 Fund.
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Walker, supported by Mrs. Smith, for the purchase of interactive flat panels in the amount of $2,725,689.56. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call, Mrs. Smith?
Dr. Blau?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Heinrich?
Yes.
Mr. Rich?
Yes?
I myself, yes. Ms. Weems?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That motion passes. Next, we have the Board of Education resolution in support of the IDEA Full Funding Act, which was discussed earlier this evening.
I'll try this again. I move that the Board of Education approve the board resolution in support of the IDEA Full Funding Act.
Support.
Motion made by Dr. Blau, supported by Mr. Walker, for the approval of the Board of Education resolution in support of the IDEA Full Funding Act. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have the consent agenda. Mr. Rich?
Thank you. I move that the Board of Education approve the February 8th, 2022 consent agenda as follows. A, approval of minutes for the January 25th, 2022 regular meeting, and B, personnel items.
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Rich, supported by Mrs. Smith, for the approval of the consent agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. Next, we have reports from board representatives. Mr. Walker.
Just an update from FAPN. Their Saturday tutoring is continuing to chug along with a great deal of success. averaging about 40 students each Saturday with roughly 20 tutors, but there is always the need for more tutors on Saturday, so we want to continue to encourage folk to come out. This coming Saturday, the Hackbots will be demonstrating their particular skill set here on the 12th, and they're also planning a Black History program with trivia on February 19th. The leaders of FAPN want to give special thanks to the student volunteers, parent volunteers, board members, and administration who volunteer as well. And just a reminder that there will be no tutoring on the 26th of this month, and tutoring will continue on March the 5th.
Thank you very much. I have a report from the PTA Council, which met last night. Very robust discussion. I'm going to try to condense it. Representative Samantha Steckloff was in attendance. She reported how proud she was of our community, expressed her support for the board. She talked about some things that the lawmakers are doing and working on in Lansing in support of education. Be Smart was on the line, a great organization that is focused on safety of guns. They talked about some staggering statistics, actually. Guns are the second leading cause of death amongst children. I didn't know that. It's the first leading cause of death amongst African-American children. 80% of gunfire on school grounds are shooters who obtain guns from the home or homes of relatives or friends. In general, guns plus impulsive teenagers equals tragedy. So they were very clear that this was not about, whether you have a gun in the home or not. Lots of us are gun owners and can put politics aside. The reality, though, is that there is more that we can do to keep our students safe. So what they do is promote SMART. It's an acronym that stands for Secure, Model, Ask, Recognize, and Tell. So on the securing, obviously secure all guns in the home. Most children, especially mine, are sneaky and observant, and they know where guns are stored. Hiding a gun is not keeping a gun secure. 9 times out of 10, kids know where guns are. Officer Clark?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening. Just so you know, Farmington Hills Police Department.
Could you come up to the mic, please? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening.
Just on that note, Farmington Hills Police Department and the Fire Department, we offer gun locks. I carry them with me all the time because I just give them to whoever needs them. We offer them to parents where we've had some threat issues, and we always offer the gun locks, but they're available. If anyone needs them, they can contact me, or they can just come to the police department or any fire station, and they will give them away. We have many. So, just putting that out there.
We really appreciate that communication. Thank you so much. It's really important. Now, this is something that a lot of people struggle with because clearly if you have the desire for a firearm, for anything other than hunting, if it's for protection, most people sort of feel like, what's the point of having a firearm if you're in the position of ever having to defend yourself and you have to tell the intruder, hold on, wait, let me go get it, let me go unlock and, get it out of the safe. But still, we have to be smart. And we have to model, that is the M, we have to model responsible behavior and have a conversation with children. A is for ask about firearms in other homes. Again, often children will get a weapon from not only their home, but from someone else's. R is for recognize the role of guns in suicide. 40% of suicides involve a gun. 17% of high school students who have seriously considered attempting suicide. 17% of high school students have seriously considered attempting suicide. Now that statistic is from 2017. We know that in 2021, 2022, that number, I don't want to guess, but I would not, I bet money it's more than double that today. So if you know your child is in stress, you might want to consider removing a gun from your household. Most people who attempt suicide do not die unless they use a gun. So that was sort of staggering to me. And then T is tell your peers to be smart. I know that was long, but I thought it was a really important message, and I just wanted to share that. The Michigan Alliance for Families was also present yesterday at the PTA Council meeting. They offer support for folks who have questions related to special education. So you can go to MichiganAllianceForFamilies.org instead of Googling, especially if you're on your way to discuss your child's IEP and you don't know what questions to ask. They are a very helpful resource. They talked about the mental health crisis, and then there were principals in attendance, David Reese and Chandra Hurton, who gave their reports about what was going on in the high schools and at the elementary schools. Interestingly, today is 100 days. We celebrate our 100 days today. So all across elementary schools in our district, they're counting lots and loads today. They're doing a lot of 100-day celebrations. So, and at the high school level, there was a celebration around credentialing through our CTEs. I know that's a area of passion for you, Ms. Walker. And so our Farmington Central high school students are also working on getting some credentialing. So that was all great. That ends my report. Next, do we have any recommendations for future agenda items? Mr. Walker.
I'd like to see us continue this discussion as we continue to dive into data around how we're moving the needle to work on that opportunity gap as it related to those subgroups specifically, but also, as Ms. Heinrich pointed out, how we're also moving the needle for those who are achieving at a much higher level and how we're pushing them along a little further. I'd like never to minimize the need for marginalized groups to be lifted up and supported. We want to continue to do our best to provide a very full picture of everybody's level of achievement and needs as they grow and develop within the district. So whatever that looks like, it could be a board retreat where we dive into it and then report out, or something coming from, cabinet and so forth. However we get to that, I'd just like to continue to see that lifted up and dug into a little deeper, because what we had tonight was so fascinating and enlightening, and kudos again to all the wonderful people who put all that together. So
I think that's a great topic for a board retreat. Thank you for lifting that up. Any others? Dr. Blau.
I'd like us to continue to consider other ways that we can add student voice. Perhaps that looks like having a member from the student roundtable occasionally come and give a report at a board meeting, or consider the possibility of having I don't know how we would do this, but having a board member, a student member of the board, or maybe a rotating position, something of that nature.
Sure. We have discussed that, and we will bring it back up again. I do know that we do have generally a student roundtable, a member of student roundtable come to visit us. Unfortunately, they've been busy between the president and the vice president, but they will come back to us at a meeting soon enough. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for that add. Mm-hmm. Any others? All right, well then we are moving to good and welfare. Good and welfare, Mrs. Smith and then Mrs. Heinrich.
First, happy Black History Month and happy Valentine's Day if you have a Valentine. Also, happy birthday to our colleague, Zach Rich, even though he has for the past 3 years celebrated his birthday at board meetings. And so for a young man to be here on his birthday, we have to say happy birthday to you, Zach. And happy birthday to Diane Bauman, who is sitting in the back, who is celebrating tomorrow. And also, I had the privilege of going over to the bus terminal today, and I had the opportunity to talk to our bus drivers. Shout out to those bus drivers. They are the first people that see our little people in the morning, and they're the last ones, if you got a little one, they're grumpy in the morning, and then when they get out of school, they're grumpy after school. So they get to see those little people every day. Not only are they driving those school buses, they are volunteering in our buildings as noon supervisors and custodians. And they are sitting in that bus terminal laughing and making jokes with me and just having such a great time. So thank you to our bus drivers, and don't think that we don't respect you and don't, love what you do, because I couldn't do it. I do miss riding the bus since COVID because I would do a morning run and an afternoon. Also, we lost one of our great principals to to Bloomfield Hills, so congratulations to Mr. Strouder, and thank you for helping him and seeing what he wanted and what his passion was, is to work with children throughout the district of Bloomfield Hills. And I just say thank you to our colleagues in Bloomfield Hills for taking him, but that's it, don't take anybody else. So on that note, thank you and have a great Valentine's Day. Don't eat too many chocolates. And again, Zach, happy birthday.
Mr. Walker.
Ms. Smith brings up a really good point. I just would like to lift up our superintendent because to me, it's a real mark of a leader who is fearless enough, A, to let good people go, but B, to also assist them in finding their own happiness along the way. And Ms. Smith, that's just a great point. That is really a great characteristic about you, Dr. Delgado, and I think it needs to be lifted up and applauded and commended, sir. Thank you for being that kind of, I'm having a loss for the word, but just a supportive leader of the people who serve with you and serve alongside of you as well. So just wanted to lift that up.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Dr. Blau.
Ms. Heinrich.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. I missed you, Mrs. Heinrich.
Well, I just didn't know, I signed up for this MSAN webinar on supporting school boards through challenging times, and it was challenging because it was a different time zone, it was Central Time, so I practiced looking for it an hour early, and then I met Mrs. Fox on it, and we didn't have to go out in the cold, and it was really interesting. I learned a lot, and one of the things is how do we work to find common ground, not me side winning or losing, which was kind of interesting, but a little factoids because they talked about teacher education and teacher shortages in the teacher ed programs. And it's just, the impact of the pandemic on the teacher shortages. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics, here's a factoid, says there are 567,000 fewer educators in the U.S. schools today than there were before the pandemic.
I'm sorry, could you say that number again?
567,000 fewer educators in the U.S. schools today than there were before the pandemic. They said that there's teacher shortages, the teacher ed program. Some of the problems are low pay, student loan debt. They said the average cost to receive a teaching degree is $57,000. Perceived lack of support for teachers, and it's nice to hear the support that we're giving our teachers in this school district. And I was just reminiscing my first teaching job. I had a little connection with our new, and I didn't have any support in my first teaching job, so that's changing. And they talked about what kind of assignments or courses are given to the new teachers. So, those are all the bad things that are improving, which I'm just making these connections right now, but we do have mentoring programs. So, and it said that 90% of the NEA, National Education Association members, say that they are feeling burned out is a serious problem. And younger teachers are the ones that are leaving or considering leaving. And one of our community members that spoke was, I'm listening to him saying, well, I was a teacher, but only for 8 months. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, there's a young person that left quick. So it's real important that we really support our teachers. And I really appreciated the time for learning. Do you have anything to add to that? It was nice seeing you online and learning together.
Excellent.
Nothing.
Dr. Blau?
I wanted to say thank you to the 4As and your friends Eunice and Mary. I had such a delightful time dialoguing together with you. Thank you for making the time to talk with me, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Mr. Rich?
Thank you. Just a few things. First, this upcoming Saturday, there are two things I want to remind people of. First, as Mr. Walker already brought up, is Super Saturdays, tutoring with the Farmington African American Parent Network from 9 to 11 a.m. right here in this room, whether you need tutoring or you can be a tutor. We would love to see you here. We definitely need tutors, areas including science and math, working with students on reading, all different grade levels. So if you are able to assist, we would love to see you here. Any help that you can provide would be fantastic. And then, like I said, that is 9 to 11 a.m. Later on Saturday, from 1 to 2:30 p.m. is the redistricting roundup. So as many people know, with the districts changing at the state level due to the redistricting, we have some different state districts now representing our district. So there are currently seated representatives whose districts are shifting to cover our area. So you will have the ability to meet state representatives Kyra Bolden, Samantha Steckloff, and Kelly Breen, and state senators Jeremy Moss and Rosemary Bayer. While we will be losing Senator Moss and State Representative Mari Manoogian as representatives, we will keep Representative Steckloff and be gaining Representatives Breen and Bolden and Senator Bayer if they were to be reelected. But just under that assumption, it just wants to give the chance to meet them, get to know them, because these are the connections that we will need to have moving forward. It's important to have these kind of connections with our legislators as we move forward with a lot of these. So it's Saturday at the Pipe Fitters Local 636 Hall. That's 30100 on Northwestern Highway in Farmington Hills. It's just about as far down Northwestern as you can go without entering Southfield and staying in Farmington Hills. So you can get there. It's right at Inkster and Northwestern. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I know that the representatives and senators are very much looking forward to meeting everyone.
What time did you say that?
That is 1 until 2:30 p.m.
Where is it again?
It is at the Pipe Fitters Local 636 Hall. And then one last thing is the applications are due on February 28th for the Community Choice Foundation Scholarship Program. Since 2009, they have awarded more than $1.3 million in scholarships to over 200 students. So this year, they are giving 15 scholarships worth $5,000 to graduating high school seniors with the desire to attend college in Michigan. They are also offering 6 $2,500 scholarships for continuing education to students looking to further their studies, pursue higher degrees, or get recertified. And they are also offering 4 $2,500 scholarships to students who are seeking vocational training or certification through accredited programs. So feel free to check that out. You can check it on the Community Choice Credit Union's website. They have a scholarship page. If you know of students or you are looking to be recertified or enter a skilled trade or CTE program, please feel free to check that out. It's an incredible program, and it is just a great opportunity for anyone in our community.
Thank you. A couple updates from me. First, I was able to attend the U.S. Department of Education Advancing Equity and Career Connected Education 4-hour summit last week. It was really good to know that our equity efforts are not only aligned with the state of Michigan, but also at the federal level with the Department of Education. That was really encouraging. I want to echo my colleagues in wishing Zach a happy birthday and Diane Bauman a happy birthday. At first I thought like 3 years with the board, how does that happen? Doesn't your birthday rotate the days? Like what is, but we've had so many workshops and special meetings that, you know, you've just been the luckiest person in the world to be able to spend all this time with us. So congratulations. I want to lift up that the Oakland County School Board Association sent us a thank you for Board Recognition Month. So all of you have a bag tag that you can put on your luggage, which was very nice, and we appreciate that. And there's also one for our superintendent. So congratulations on Board Appreciation Month. If you're like me, I celebrate my birthday way in advance and way after my birthday, so we can celebrate Board Appreciation Month into February if you want. I'm glad you mentioned scholarships, because I almost forgot. The scholarship deadline for Farmington Public Schools is usually in March. And since this is our only meeting in February and we won't be meeting again until March, I just wanted to remind parents of seniors, but really your parents are going to make you do this. Parents, remember that there's a website, Farmington Education Foundation, where there are a bunch of scholarships that are being offered from various Farmington-related entities. I know that my family has offered a scholarship every year. It won't be the $5,000 scholarships you were talking about. Maybe you can divide that by 5. Last year, our scholarship was $1,000. We'll probably try to do the same this year. We'll do something. So please look for that. Ours is the Weems Scholarship, but there are plenty of them out there. Please don't hesitate to, tap into those funds. And then finally, I just wanted to say thank you to our Farmington and Farmington Hills Police Department. I've heard it from many of my colleagues. We appreciate you guys, and we especially appreciate Officer Clark. I get to see him at North Farmington often at games and at various events, and he is both friendly and funny and just fair, too. I really appreciate him. So thank you for all that you do. With that, I think that concludes our board meeting. We stand adjourned. Thank you.